Chapter 972. Furong, Wuxia, and Ze stood quietly at the side. What happened just now was really emotional for the three of them. From what the three of them knew, the Allure Beauty's actions were wrong. However, the three of them inexplicably felt that Yu Qianzhou's words, "She's not my woman," were too cruel to the Allure Beauty. The three of them stared at the silent Yu Qianzhou, but their ears were paying attention to the movements in the temptress's room. However, they couldn't hear a sound at all. Obviously, she had set up a soundproof enchantment. The three of them were all women, so they could imagine how sad the temptress must be at this time. Maybe she was crying heartbreakingly. Originally, Wuxia was the one who was the most troubled and couldn't understand this matter. It was hard for her to accept the fact that so many women ran out of Yu Qianzhou for no reason. However, after witnessing all this, she realized that she was lucky. Moreover, in this world, it was very common for men to have 3 or 4 wives. She even sympathized with the temptress. She couldn't imagine what she would be like if one day Yu Qianzhou said that she wasn't his woman. She was afraid that she would collapse. The other women's thoughts were similar to her. Furong gently walked to Yu Qianzhou's side, held his arm, and said softly, "Go in and see her." However, Yu Qianzhou didn't answer the question and smiled bitterly. "I quite admire Yanggua now, or should I say admire Master Jean." Yanggua? Master Jean? The women were suddenly confused. They had never heard of these two names, but they were guessing which two masters in the immortal world were. Ze even asked foolishly, "I heard from my master that the immortal emperor in the immortal world is called Jean Tai. Is the Master Jean you mentioned him?" Yu Qianzhou immediately rolled his eyes and ignored her. How could he tell them the story of the master and disciple's incestuous relationship? If he told them, wouldn't it make them think of his inner thoughts? He patted the back of Furong's hand and said, "She needs your tolerance more. Otherwise, she will feel even worse if she stays with you every day. Can you understand me?" "I understand." Furong nodded and let go of his hand. She walked straight to the door of the Enchantress of 100 Charms and pushed the door open. After seeing her off, Yu Qianzhou slowly turned to look at Wuxia and asked, "Will you hate me?" He was worried that Wuxia wouldn't be able to accept the fact that he had too many women. A trace of grievance flashed across Wuxia's face, but he still shook his head. He walked to Yu Qianzhou's side and said in a low voice, "Can you help me save little Phoenix sister?" When Yu Qianzhou heard that, he suddenly felt a headache coming on. Although she was shaking her head to show that she wouldn't, it felt like she was saying, "If you can't save Sister Phoenix, I won't forgive you." But how was he supposed to save a crow that had been dead for so long? If he was seriously injured, he could still think of a way, but in fact, he was already dead. However, he couldn't refuse her. Seeing that he was speechless, Wuxia thought that he had agreed. She immediately took out the dead crow from her storage pouch and brought it to Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. He didn't know whether to take it or not, and his expression kept twitching. He now deeply understood that it wasn't a good thing to have too many women. Troublesome matters came one after another, and he still missed his single life. Isn't this the crow?" Ze curiously stretched her head over and grabbed the crow in Wuxia's hand. After confirming that it was indeed dead, she immediately avoided it with a contemptuous, and directly stuffed it into Yu Qianzhou's arms. Looking at Wuxia, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Are you sure? How can something that's already dead be saved?" As she said that, she looked at Yu Qianzhou and suddenly realized, "I know, you're deliberately making things difficult for him." That's how it should be. She seemed to be taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. "It's not a crow, it's a phoenix. Before it died, it said that Yu Qianzhou had a way to save it." When Wuxia remembered that the crow had been killed to save her, a look of sorrow immediately appeared on her face. Ze looked at the crow in Yu Qianzhou's hand in disbelief. "You said that it can speak?" Yu Qianzhou waved his hand at Ze, signaling her to shut up. Holding the crow's leg, he asked suspiciously, "Shui, did it really say that I could save it?" When he remembered that this crow was the famous phoenix from his previous life, he started to believe it a little. If the number one divine bird in the world could be killed so easily, then it wouldn't be called a divine bird. Even he didn't believe it. Wuxia nodded with certainty. "Before little sister Phoenix died, she desperately told me to find a way to find you. She said that you could save it." "I can save it?" Yu Qianzhou held the crow's leg in one hand and swayed it in front of him. He rubbed his chin and muttered. After thinking for a while, he raised his eyebrows and said, "Let's go and give it a try." After saying that, he walked towards a room with the crow's leg. Wuxia followed closely behind him. Ze naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to watch the show. She followed behind the two of them happily. In the room, the crow's corpse was thrown on a table. Yu Qianzhou pinched his chin and walked around the table twice. Ze also followed behind him like a conman. Wuxia looked at Yu Qianzhou expectantly. Could it be that it's not completely dead? Yu Qianzhou suddenly stopped and subconsciously asked Ze who was behind him. Ze looked at him as if she was looking at an idiot. She seemed to be saying, "It's already dead, and you still say that it's not completely dead? Forget it. It's useless to tell you. You don't understand modern medicine," Yu Qianzhou said. Then, he turned the dead crow over so that its belly was facing the sky. He pressed 2 fingers on the crow's chest and kept pressing. The two girls looked at each other. Ze suddenly asked Wuxia, "Shui, your little sister Phoenix is a female?" Wuxia nodded. Ze immediately looked at Yu Qianzhou with disgust and said with disdain, "It seems that not only are you a big liar, you're also a big pervert. You even took advantage of a female crow. Damn it. Don't talk nonsense if you don't understand," Yu Qianzhou said with disdain. After pressing the crow's nipples for a while, he bent over and opened the crow's mouth. He blew hard into the crow's mouth. This idiot was doing artificial respiration like in his previous life. How could he think of this? Ze and Wuxia looked at him curiously with their mouths open. They had never seen such a treatment method before. They were quite doubtful whether it would work. However, the result was just as the two girls expected. After a while, Yu Qianzhou realized that the crow was still dead. He finally gave up and stood at the side, shaking his head and sighing. Wuxia leaned over and said with a sad face, "Yu Qianzhou, you must think of a way to save my little sister Phoenix. I really can't think of any way to save it, but there's a way that we can try. I'm just afraid that if we fail, your little sister Phoenix's corpse won't even be found. I'm afraid that you'll blame me then," Yu Qianzhou said with a toothache. "What is it?" Wuxia asked worriedly. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, "Do you still remember the phoenix's nirvana that I told you about at your house? Legend has it that the phoenix is an immortal bird. Every time it dies, it can be reborn. I just don't know if it's true or not. But didn't the crow say that it can be reborn after going through a tribulation? I think it should be true. But I'm still a little worried. If it can't be reborn after going through the tribulation, even if it doesn't turn into ashes, it will become a roasted crow. Ah! You can burn it back to life with fire? Is that true? Is this crow so magical? It's not a crow, but a phoenix." Ze looked as if she had heard a ridiculous story. She couldn't help but reach out to fiddle with the dead crow on the table. Wuxia frowned slightly. She remembered that the crow seemed to have said something about rebirth. She intertwined her fingers together and asked, "Should we try?" Yu Qianzhou immediately shook his head and said, "It's yours, and you have to decide. What if you burn it down? Wouldn't that make you sad? That's the reason why I haven't done anything yet. I'll listen to you. Shui, since we can't think of any other way, just let him burn it." Ze persuaded Wuxia energetically. After all, it wasn't hers, so she was very decisive. Wu Lixue hesitated for a moment, then nodded weakly at Yu Qianzhou, agreeing. In any case, no matter if it was a crow or a phoenix, Yu Qianzhou didn't have a good impression of these dead birds that still tormented people. If they were burned down, so be it. After getting Wu Lixue's agreement, he didn't say anything else and directly grabbed the crow in his palm. A ball of red flames instantly surged out, enveloping the crow and burning it. As soon as the flames appeared, Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He immediately felt that the dead crow's body was rapidly absorbing the heat from the flames. Wu Lixue and Ziyi looked at each other. They both saw the clues. A normal bird's feather would most likely turn into ashes upon contact with a raging fire. However, this crow's feather was not damaged at all in the raging fire. This was clearly illogical. Wu Lixue's eyes immediately lit up, feeling a glimmer of hope. TSK. There really is a way. Yu Qianzhou was amazed. He guessed that there really was such a thing as a phoenix undergoing nirvana. The heat released by the ordinary flames in his palm was actually not enough for the bird to absorb. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand towards the window, and a gust of wind swept out. The curtains on the window immediately rolled down, and the red flames immediately shone in the room. Just as the curtains were rolled down, the red flames retracted, and the green flames continued to burn the motionless crow in his palm. After the time it took to eat a meal, the crow still did not move. Yu Qianzhou simply couldn't believe it. Even with the huge amount of heat contained in the green flames, there was still no reaction from the crow. He really didn't know how long it would take for it to absorb. Then let's try the purple flames. Yu Qianzhou's eyebrows twitched, and the green flames retracted, while the purple flames rose up and enveloped the crow. The beautiful scene of the three-colored flames immediately caused Ziyi and Wu Lixue's hearts to flutter. And after the purple flames appeared, in just a few breaths' time, Yu Qianzhou immediately felt that the crow in his palm seemed to have a reaction. Chapter 973. In just a short while, the majestic and powerful energy of the purple flame seemed to have saturated the crow's body, and the speed at which the crow was absorbing the energy was gradually slowing down. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The power of the purple flames was indeed far greater than the blue flames, and if he used the blue flames to supply the crow to absorb, he was afraid that it would not be satisfied in a short period of time. Because of this, Yu Qianzhou began to ponder. He reckoned that the legendary phoenix's nirvana was actually the dead phoenix absorbing the energy within the flames, and when the energy was saturated, it should be able to be reborn. It was probably similar to charging the phoenix, and thinking about it, using fire to burn the phoenix was most likely the same. It really was an advanced divine bird, and had already reached the level of high technology in his previous world. At this moment, Wu Lixue and Ziyi both let out a surprised "ee" sound. They saw that the sleeping crow in Yu Qianzhou's palm had begun to emit a faint rainbow halo, flickering in and out of existence, and in an instant it was beautiful. Following that, a refreshing fragrance wafted over, and the flickering rainbow halo no longer flickered, but gradually condensed into a lingering rainbow cloud that circled around the sleeping crow in Yu Qianzhou's palm. The rainbow cloud's orbit was like a moving nebula in the universe, and it was mesmerizing, causing the three of them to feel relaxed and happy. As for the sleeping crow in the purple flames, it was as if it was sleeping sweetly in an ancient nebula. Its originally stiff legs were now gently retracting under its abdomen, and its stiff head had also returned to its shoulder feathers. Unknowingly, it had gone from lying on its side to nesting in Yu Qianzhou's palm, like a tired bird returning to its nest, sleeping under the starry sky, its demeanor unusually peaceful. Just as the fragrance was getting stronger and stronger, the heart-warming fragrance was suddenly sucked away from their nostrils. The three of them subconsciously stretched out their heads to chase after it and took a deep breath. However, the fragrance was so resolute that it did not leave even the slightest trace behind. The air in front of them instantly became light and tasteless, completely returning to normal. The seven-colored cloud that had gradually spread out to cover half of the space in the room was also gradually shrinking. In the end, it was the size of a dinosaur egg, forming a seven-colored eggshell. The gorgeous flowing light was so beautiful that people didn't dare to breathe. After the rainbow-colored eggshell was formed, it completely blocked the vision of the three of them, and they could no longer see the sleeping crow inside. At the same time, the rainbow-colored eggshell also completely blocked the absorption of the purple flames. Yu Qianqiu let out a sigh of relief, feeling that his mission should be completed, and he quickly retracted the purple flames back into his body. In an instant, the purple light in the room disappeared, and Yu Qianqiu held the rainbow-colored eggshell with one hand, illuminating the entire room in a strange and dazzling light, as if they were in a dream. Wuxia and Ze were even more dumbfounded, their mouths wide open as they looked left and right. So beautiful, so beautiful. Just as the three of them were immersed in this dream, the light in the room suddenly changed, and they could only see the rainbow-colored light on the eggshell moving quickly, suddenly colliding with each other, and exploding with a dazzling light, so bright that the three of them closed their eyes, not daring to look straight at it. But in the instant that the three of them closed their eyes, the dazzling light suddenly retracted, and the three of them immediately felt the room turn dark. Kang kang. A loud cry reverberated in the room, causing the three of them to open their eyes at the same time, only to see a strange-looking bird standing on Yu Qianqiu's palm. To be exact, it should be a chicken, with a chicken head, a chicken tail, and a chicken body. The only difference was that there were three rainbow-colored feathers on its head, and the color of its body was yellow and gray. Calling it a chicken didn't seem like it. Pheasant. Yu Qianqiu cried out involuntarily, and then he was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but wonder if it was because he often roasted pheasants, and in the end, turned the crow into the appearance of a pheasant. That would be a sin, but he didn't seem to have thought about roasting a pheasant just now, right? Pheasant. After being reminded by Yu Qianqiu, Wuxia and Ze also cried out involuntarily. If this wasn't a pheasant, then what was it? Both of them had seen pheasants before, especially Ze. In order to practice the fowl show, she asked Nongzhu to catch many pheasants for her to observe. Although most of them were eaten by Nongzhu in the end, it didn't stop her from recognizing pheasants. Just as the pheasant let out a loud keng keng sound, Wei Chuanxiu, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly trembled. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the other side of the corridor. Yunpeng, who was standing on the rooftop, also trembled and quickly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he appeared beside Wei Chuanxiu, and said with a serious expression, "Did you hear what just now?" Wei Chuanxiu slowly stood up and looked at Yunpeng. Yunpeng had heard it from outside, so he naturally heard it even more clearly from here. This sound wasn't loud, but when it entered their ears, it actually made their bodies weak and made them want to worship it. This was the first time they had such a feeling, and it was really too strange. It seems to be the cry of something. Wei Chuanxiu looked at Yunpeng in bewilderment. She asked herself in her heart, what kind of cry could make her heart tremble? What kind of cry? Yunpeng's white sword-like eyebrows knitted together, and he slowly muttered to himself, what kind of thing can make the cry of gold and jade? Many years ago, I heard from my late father that in ancient times, there was a divine beast phoenix that descended from the god realm to the immortal realm. The cry it made was like the resonance of gold and jade, sonorous and mellow. Could it be the cry of a phoenix? Phoenix? Are you kidding me? There must be something wrong with your brain. The divine beast phoenix is a supreme imperial family with the noblest bloodline among us birds. It doesn't drink unless it's morning dew, it doesn't eat unless it's tender bamboo, and it doesn't rest unless it's 1,000-year-old Chinese parasol tree. Wei Chuanxiu looked like she had heard the funniest joke. She pointed around and said, "You can't be saying that a phoenix would run to the World Chamber of Commerce founded by Yu Qianqiu, right? Then isn't this phoenix a bit too blind? It really doesn't live up to its title of phoenix. I'm just saying." Yunpeng changed his mind and said, "But this cry is indeed a bit strange. It's a phoenix, I'll chop off its head and give it to you. Wei Chuanqiu snorted and looked to the other side, saying, it must be Yu Qianqiu doing something again. Let's go take a look. The two of them then dashed over in a flash. Inside the room, the pheasant standing on Yu Qianqiu's palm suddenly opened its eyes. A 7-colored glow flashed in its sharp eyes, and it was even more spirited than a big rooster. Yu Qianqiu said in astonishment, Crow, is that you? How did you turn into a pheasant? You're the one who turned into a pheasant. Ah! The pheasant cried out in fear and flapped its wings to fly up. Its 2 claws were frantically clapping in the air. Yu Qianqiu's face instantly darkened. This wasn't the first time he saw this pheasant acting like it had stepped on dog poop. He had been humiliated like this in the Wu clan, but it was just a crow at that time. But this action undoubtedly proved that this pheasant in front of him was the crow of the past. Ah! This pheasant can talk. Zi looked at Wu Lixue and said in astonishment, Shui, this pheasant is that crow of yours? Shut up. I'm not a pheasant. The pheasant flapped its wings and arrived in front of Zi. It spoke in a clear and melodious voice, I don't drink unless it's morning dew, I don't eat unless it's tender bamboo, and I don't perch unless it's 1,000-year-old parasol tree. I am a phoenix. Wu Lixue had heard these words more than once in the Wu clan. Back then, in order to correct Wu Lixue's bad habit of calling herself a crow, Crow had repeatedly warned Wu Lixue about these words. Wu Lixue, who was at the side, immediately applauded and cheered, Little Sister Phoenix, you really came back to life. Big Sister Shui, The pheasant was also pleasantly surprised. It seemed to have tears in its eyes as it landed on Wu Lixue's shoulder. It hugged Wu Lixue's neck and whimpered, that evil person didn't hurt you, right? No. A beautiful woman and a pheasant gave off a strange feeling as if they had just escaped from death and met again. They were being overly sentimental. Zi immediately clicked her tongue and walked to Wu Lixue's side. She looked at the pheasant that could talk with curiosity. At this moment, the room's door was suddenly pushed open. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng stood side by side at the door. Their gazes swept across the room and locked onto Wu Lixue's shoulder. They had heard the conversation clearly from outside. They actually heard someone claiming to be a phoenix. The two of them were shocked and immediately opened the door to verify the situation. However, when they saw the pheasant on Wu Lixue's shoulder, they were a little confused. After all, they had never seen a phoenix before. They had only heard the legends of phoenixes. In the legends, phoenixes all had colorful feathers and were indescribably noble. How could it look like a pheasant? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. It was actually Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu. Seeing that the two of them were staring at the pheasant on Wu Lixue's shoulder, he immediately laughed and said, it's really rare for two seniors to come together. I wonder what noble purpose do you have? The two of them looked at each other. Wei Chuanqiu looked at the pheasant that was hugging Wu Lixue's neck and asked, it's a phoenix? Her tone was full of doubt. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He immediately said perfunctorily, you heard it yawn like a toad. Do you think it looks like a phoenix? It's clearly a pheasant. You are the pheasant. When the pheasant heard someone insulting it, it immediately retracted its wings and jumped on Wu Lixue's shoulder. Its sharp eyes suddenly flashed with colorful light. It stared at Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng and said, so it's a white-feathered great peng and a green bat. You actually dare to question this god's identity. How dare you? Unexpectedly, Wu Lixue grabbed it and directly held it on his waist. He scolded, don't be rude to seniors. Then he nervously bowed to Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng and said, two seniors, please don't be offended. It is still young and ignorant. Shui, let me go. This god's bloodline is noble. I am a supreme royal among the birds. How can I bow to them? The pheasant whimpered and struggled. However, it was tightly held by Wuxia. It couldn't use brute force to break free for fear of hurting Wuxia. However, it really felt that bowing to Wei Chuanxiu and Yunpeng would make the phoenix lose face. It almost cried. Chapter 974. Yu Qianqiu saw some clues from the increasingly shocked expressions of Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu. He knew that it was meaningless to continue perfunctorily, so he walked to Wuxua's side and casually slapped the pheasant's head. Then, he smilingly scolded, "So what if you're a phoenix? It's so big that even a bird can't compare. At most, it's a pheasant." This slap made the pheasant squeal. It struggled under Wuxua's arm. "Yu Qianqiu, you dare to hit this god." It shouted that it wanted to fight Yu Qianqiu to the death. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with this useless fella that could be easily killed by Yan Zhuixing. He stretched his hand towards the door and walked out with Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu. The three went up to the rooftop and set up a soundproof barrier. They stood side by side in front of the white jade railings. Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu stood on the left and right of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu glanced around and looked into the distance. He wasn't in a hurry to speak. If they had any questions, they would ask him. The two early-stage Immortal Emperor experts were still shocked by the phoenix's roar. Although they didn't see the phoenix's sacred art with their own eyes, they were sure that the pheasant was a phoenix. The keng-keng sound they heard at first was the most powerful evidence. Secondly, it was rumored that after a phoenix hatched from its shell, it could speak the human language. This wasn't something that other beasts could compare with. It represented the extremely superior noble bloodline of a mythological beast. From the clear female voice it let out, it was clear that it was still a young phoenix. There was still a long way to go before it could become a truly majestic and noble phoenix. It still needed to grow. But even though it was still a young phoenix, the shock it brought to the two was indescribable. When the two came back to their senses, they felt their mouths were dry. Wei Chuanqiu slowly turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu like he was a monster. Just now, this fella had casually slapped the phoenix like he was bullying a wimpy kid. For these winged fellows, there were probably not many who dared to do so. And that girl, she actually held the phoenix under her arm like she was holding a chicken. What was wrong with this world? Could it be that the phoenix had no place in their eyes? However, what Wei Chuanqiu couldn't figure out the most was that the phoenix was a divine beast that lived in the immortal realm. If it wanted to descend to the immortal realm, it should be a real adult phoenix. Why did a young phoenix appear, and why did it fall into this brat's hands? It was simply unimaginable. Yunpeng, who had also turned around, had the same thoughts. "Yu Qianqiu, tell us honestly, where did you get this baby phoenix from?" Wei Chuanqiu held it in for a long time before saying this. "I just happened to pick it up." Yu Qianqiu shrugged disapprovingly. "You happened to pick it up?" Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng lost their voices at the same time. Yunpeng, who had always been calm, couldn't bear to listen any longer. His white sword-like eyebrows flew up as he coldly snorted, "Yu Qianqiu, it seems like the two of us are nothing in your eyes. Do you think we're 3 years old? He just happened to pick up a phoenix. Then when did you happen to pick up a divine dragon for us to see?" Yu Qianqiu looked at Yunpeng blankly and thought to himself, "You really don't want to mess with this daddy." This daddy really did happen to meet a divine dragon, but the other party was a bit too scary, so it really wasn't easy to pick it up. "If there's a chance, I'll take it out and let you have a good look. As long as you don't be afraid, it's fine." In any case, this daddy was scared shitless at that time and still doesn't dare to see it a second time. Looking at the two's expressions, he knew that if he didn't give a complete reason, he was afraid that they would be at odds with him. He shook his head, made a big circle with his hands, and said with a bitter smile, "To be exact, at the beginning, I only picked up an egg. It was a very strange egg that could even glow, and it was about this big. Before, I didn't know that there was a phoenix inside. Even if it hatched, I didn't know that it was a phoenix. After all, I've never seen a phoenix before. It was that pheasant's mouth that was very cheap, and it kept chirping that it was some divine bird phoenix. That's what happened. There's nothing I can do if you don't believe me. In short, I really did pick it up. His words were half true and half false. It was impossible for him to reveal the things that happened in the human world, but his attitude could be considered sincere, and it didn't seem like he was faking it. Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. The latter sized up Yu Qianzhou with a slightly judgmental gaze, and said, "Even if it's a phoenix egg, I'm afraid that it can't be hatched just because you say so. Could it be that you know how to hatch a phoenix egg?" His tone was full of doubt, and this was the biggest point that Yu Qianzhou's words gave the two the biggest doubt. "You guys think too highly of me." Yu Qianzhou laughed, and embarrassedly rubbed his hands. At that time, I really thought that the egg looked too strange. In fact, I didn't think it was an egg at first, but when I saw that it was actually glowing, I wanted to open it to see if there was any treasure inside. But you guys don't know, that egg was really too hard. I tried everything I could, but I couldn't open it. In the end, I really had no other choice, so I thought of a method that wasn't really a method, and threw it into the fire. I just wanted to give it a try. Hee hee. Speaking of which, it was really a coincidence. No matter how much strength I used, I couldn't open it. In the end, when I burned it with fire, it really did burn, and that fellow jumped out from inside, claiming to be a divine bird phoenix. That's right. I still have that eggshell. Without hesitation, Yu Qianzhou immediately took out 2 pieces of the phoenix eggshell that he had collected, and handed them to the two. In order to win their trust, it could be said that he didn't hold anything back. This was also an action that couldn't be helped. After all, at the moment, these 2 fellows were the only gold medal fighters that he could bring out. The slightly protruding surface of the eggshell was pitch black, and the slightly concave inside carried a brilliant silver splendor. It was very beautiful. The two held the item in their hands and examined it slightly. Immediately, their expressions were filled with fear. The two of them felt an awe-inspiring majesty from the eggshell. Humans might not be able to discover anything, but to the two of them, they had the feeling of wanting to pry into the secrets of the royal family, only to be met with a severe warning. The majesty directly shocked the two of them. All of the doubts in the two's hearts immediately disappeared. They were completely sure that this was the phoenix eggshell, so what Yu Qianzhou said to them was naturally also true. To be able to reveal such a matter that shouldn't be spoken of lightly to others, the way the two looked at Yu Qianzhou quietly changed. Good stuff. Wei Chuanxiu looked at the eggshell in her hand in amazement. Then she looked at Yun Peng and said, "Yun Peng, if I'm not wrong, this thing should be of great benefit to you." Yun Peng silently nodded, but still returned it to Yu Qianzhou's hand. "Yun Peng, if I'm not wrong, this thing should be of great benefit to you." This was the first time Yu Qianzhou saw Yun Peng reveal a gaze filled with reluctance and desire towards something. He asked with some curiosity, "Senior Yun, why don't you tell me what benefit this thing has to you?" Yun Peng tried his best to shift his gaze away from the eggshell. He knew in his heart that if this eggshell was in the hands of someone else, he was afraid that he would go all out to snatch it, because this thing was too precious to him. However, he was still the man of Wei Chuanxiu's adopted daughter, so he couldn't bring himself to do such a thing. Seeing that he didn't want to say anything, Yu Qianzhou looked at Wei Chuanxiu suspiciously. Wei Chuanxiu looked at the eggshell in her hand thoughtfully for a while, then suddenly frowned and said, "Phoenix egg. Phoenix egg. I seem to have heard of a legend a long time ago, but it's too long ago, I can't remember, but it seems. I remember." Wei Chuanxiu suddenly stared at Yun Peng and asked, "Could it be the legendary phoenix True Blood?" Yun Peng slowly turned his head, his eyes revealing a strange expression, and nodded vigorously. Wei Chuanxiu suddenly came to a realization, and said, "I understand, I finally understand, this thing is indeed of great benefit to you." Phoenix true blood? Yu Qianqiu's heart itched when he heard this, and pulled on Wei Chuanqiu's big sleeve, and said, Bat King Wei, what is Phoenix true blood? Wei Chuanqiu looked at him, and seemed to be a little hesitant, as if considering whether to tell him or not. But looking at the eggshell in her hand, and then looking at Yunpeng, she finally organized her thoughts, and said in a deep voice, according to legend, the divine beasts of the god realm are the dragon and the phoenix, the beast sovereign, and the bird sovereign. To be able to become a sovereign, there is naturally something extraordinary that cannot be compared. According to legend, the phoenix will experience 9 tribulations, bathing in the flames of nirvana 9 times, and every time it successfully goes through a tribulation, its cultivation will become stronger. It can be said to be a kind of evolution in the midst of death, and it is very miraculous. However, phoenix true blood is not something that can be found in every phoenix. Only the blood of a phoenix that has experienced 9 tribulations is qualified to be called phoenix true blood, and only such a phoenix has the chance to give birth to a phoenix egg. Yu Qianqiu was startled, and looked at the eggshell in his hand, and said, then the connection between the two is very simple. Wei Chuanqiu said with a serious expression, phoenixes are born to experience 9 tribulations, and can be said to have experienced many disasters before they can ascend to the position of sovereign, and make all birds submit to them. Legend has it that when a phoenix lays an egg, it thinks of the many disasters that will befall its children in the future, and its heart is filled with grief, so it weeps blood and cries in sorrow. There seems to be a saying called, phoenix weeps blood. In short, this means that when a phoenix lays an egg, the eggshell will be stained with phoenix true blood. With your intelligence, you should understand what I mean. Yu Qianqiu made an "oh" sound, and shook the eggshell in his hand as he nodded repeatedly, and said, what you mean is that this eggshell is stained with phoenix true blood, and this phoenix true blood is very beneficial to Senior Yun. At least you are smart. Wei Chuanqiu praised him, and then winked as he used his elbow to nudge Yu Qianqiu, and said, look at how Senior Yun helps you protect the World Commerce Chamber every day, and even saved your life from the hands of Grey Cloud Xian last time. Even if he doesn't have meritorious service, he has worked hard. Shouldn't you show some appreciation? The meaning of these words was very clear, it was nothing more than asking Yu Qianqiu to give this phoenix eggshell to Yunpeng. When these words came out, Ren Yunpeng, who was usually very calm, couldn't help but tremble slightly. He turned his head, and didn't dare to look at Yu Qianqiu. Presumably, the heart in his chest was beating non-stop. Chapter 975. No problem. We're all a family, so it's not right if we don't help each other out. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and appeared to be exceptionally forthright. Yunpeng's body trembled as he turned around with an excited expression. He was preparing what words of gratitude he should say after Yu Qianqiu gave the item to him. Wei Chuanqiu laughed heartily as he patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder and said to Yunpeng, old bird, how is it? I didn't misjudge you, did I? You followed me, didn't you? You didn't think you'd encounter such a great opportunity, did you? However, he was happy a bit too early. The item was said to be so precious that it could move Yunpeng's heart. With Yu Qianqiu's personality, it really wasn't in line with his personality if he carelessly gave it away. It won't be too late to give it away later. Yu Qianqiu took advantage of Wei Chuanqiu's happy moment to take back the piece of eggshell in his hand. He coughed and said, let me figure out what benefits this phoenix true blood has for Senior Yun first. I won't be able to bear the responsibility if something unexpected happens. The two's expressions immediately froze. Yunpeng saw him take the item from Wei Chuanqiu's hand and thought that he was going to personally give it to him. He was already prepared to take it, but who knew that these words would pop out? Wei Chuanqiu also thought that he was going to give it to Yunpeng, so he allowed him to take it back. Otherwise, with Wei Chuanqiu's personality, he would probably have kept a piece for Yunpeng even if he had to act shamelessly. Actually, this couldn't be blamed on Yu Qianqiu. He still had several dozen pieces of broken phoenix eggshells in his hands. How could he not figure out what they were used for? He couldn't just keep them in his hands like trash after knowing that they were treasures, right? At the very least, he needed to know how much he had helped Yunpeng so that he could ask for repayment in the future. You brat, you can't be thinking of going back on your word, right? Wei Chuanxiu naturally felt like he had been played. Look at what you're saying. My reputation is well known. Every spit is like a nail. My words are like a nail on a board. Unless the mountains have no edges and the heavens and earth merge together, I will not do anything that goes back on my word. Yu Qianzhou patted his chest and promised solemnly, I really want to know what benefits this Phoenix True Blood has for Senior Yun. I really want to know with a responsible attitude, whether or not there will be any accidents. Although these words sounded a little exaggerated, Wei Chuanxiu's expression finally became a little better. He thought to himself, as long as you promise to give, it's fine. If you dare to go back on your word, Grandpa will openly rob you. Bah! Accident my ass. Are you trying to play some tricks? He first expressed his doubts before explaining, the true blood of the phoenix is a precious treasure for birds. If one can absorb and refine it for their own use, not only can they borrow the power of the true blood to quickly increase their cultivation, if they are lucky, they can even obtain a chance to come back to life. After coming back to life, they will be like the phoenix, and their cultivation will be even more powerful. Of course, this depends on the amount of phoenix true blood on the eggshell. Resurrection from the dead. Oh my God, this is such a big favor. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but daydream absent-mindedly. I wonder what the effects will be after I absorb the true blood of the phoenix. I have the most phoenix eggshells. If I can be reborn like a crow in a critical moment, it will be too perfect. Looking at his drooling and wet dreams, Wei Chuanxiu could no longer see what he was thinking. It was more like he was stupid. He immediately sneered and said, "Stop daydreaming here. The true blood of the phoenix is useless to humans. Even if I pour you a few buckets of true blood of the phoenix, you will still be like this. It is only effective on birds of feathers like the yunpeng." Why? Yu Qianzhou suddenly woke up from his dream and asked with some grief and indignation. There is no why. In short, it is useless to humans. Wei Chuanxiu liked to see him like this. He sneered and said, "Forget about you, even I am useless. The true blood of the phoenix can only be absorbed by birds of feathers. Why? Don't try to fool me. Aren't you also a bird?" Yu Qianzhou's voice became a bit louder. The grief and indignation of having his dreams shattered was clearly painted on his face. Although my original body also has a pair of wings, to be exact, I belong to the beast category and not the bird category. Although I am between the bird category and the beast category, I cannot enjoy the true blood of the phoenix. Wei Chuanxiu glanced at the eggshell in his hand and snorted coldly, "I don't even feel wronged." What are you feeling wronged for? You must know that everything in the world has its gains and losses. There are enough benefits from humans. Don't tell me you want to fight for this as well. Hearing him say this, Yu Qianzhou finally felt a bit better. He was suddenly startled and said, "Bat King Wei, you said you are between the bird category and the beast category. Could it be that the word beast originated from your bat clan? You are the beast. Do you want to die?" Wei Chuanxiu immediately became angry. Joking. Joking. Don't be angry, don't be angry. After making fun of the other party, Yu Qianzhou's heart finally felt a bit better. However, he still said unwillingly, even birds like Senior Yun and the others can obtain benefits from the God realm. Can't we also obtain some benefits from the God realm? Of course, as long as you have the ability to do it. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up and he asked, "What kind of benefits?" Speaking of this, Wei Chuanxiu became serious and said with a serious expression, "Have you forgotten what I told you before? Among the top divine beasts in the God realm, dragons and phoenixes are revered. Legend has it that there is an illusory god in the god realm. Even the gods in the god realm have never seen his true body. No one knows if he is a man or a woman, and no one knows how high his cultivation is. Legend has it that this illusory god usually doesn't communicate with anyone but will directly communicate with dragons and phoenixes. It is said that dragons and phoenixes are his messengers. When he encounters something that needs to be done with force, he will order dragons to do it on his behalf while phoenixes are responsible for delivering his decrees. Dragons and phoenixes can be said to be his messengers. So awesome. You dare to play tricks in front of all living beings in the god realm, you're really amazing. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while and then he came to a realization, this matter is too far away. What does it have to do with the benefits you told me? Of course it has something to do with it. Your benefits are in the body of the dragon who is in charge of war. Wei Chuanxiu laughed and said, Phoenixes have phoenix true blood, dragons also have coiling dragon true blood. The so-called coiling dragon has the meaning of occupying the land and overlooking all living beings. It represents the supreme of the dragon race. Ordinary dragons don't dare to be crowned with the title of coiling dragon. Its rank is equivalent to that of a phoenix that has gone through 9 tribulations. As long as you find the coiling dragon that is like a 9 tribulations phoenix, capture it and release some coiling dragon true blood, then smear it on your whole body to ensure that the toughness of your skin is unparalleled in the world. I reckon that the treasures in the immortal world won't be able to harm you at all. This benefit is not bad, right? TSK. If the coiling dragon true blood really has this benefit, then it is indeed very good. Yu Qianqiu suddenly reacted after a moment of relaxation. He said with a dark face, Old bat, are you playing with me? Just think about it, the 9 tribulations phoenix was already very powerful. The martial envoy coiling dragon who was in charge of war was naturally even more amazing. If he had the ability to capture the coiling dragon and release his blood, then wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted in the immortal world? Even immortal Emperor Jin Tai wouldn't be a problem. There would be no need to go through so much trouble. What are you playing with? This is an ancient legend that I heard by chance from an elder. Ordinary people don't have the opportunity to hear it even if they want to. I'm telling you for free is already letting you off easy. Wei Chuanqiu pointed at Yunpeng who was also listening with a face full of yearning and said, If you don't believe me, ask him if he has heard of it before. Yu Qianqiu looked at Yunpeng suspiciously. Yunpeng was startled for a moment before shaking his head at Yu Qianqiu. His white sword-like eyebrows suddenly trembled as he stared at Wei Chuanqiu and slowly asked, The elder who told you these legends, could it be the one who told you about the past of Zheng, Yi, and Ming? Wei Chuanqiu was startled for a moment before he nodded with a respectful expression and said, I was really lucky to meet him and hear some stories from him. He said with a sigh as if he was very nostalgic. Seeing the two talking so mysteriously, Yu Qianqiu's curiosity was piqued again. When he heard the story of Tai Shu Zheng, demon god Yi, and the woman named Ming from Wei Chuanqiu's mouth, he once suspected something. Although immortal Emperor Jin Tai had ruled the immortal world for countless years, the era of Zheng, Yi, and Ming was long before Jin Tai. Almost no one in the immortal world knew about such a long time ago, but the elder Wei Chuanqiu spoke of was able to know the secrets of Zheng, Yi, and Ming. Obviously, he was not an ordinary person. Bat King Wei, who is this elder you're talking about? Yu Qianqiu curiously asked. However, after Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng looked at each other, they seemed to be a bit secretive and didn't say anything. The more it was like this, the more Yu Qianqiu's heart itched. He immediately threw the matter of being tricked to the back of his mind and pulled Wei Chuanqiu's sleeve like a child asking for candy. He chuckled and said, We are all family, what is there to hide? If it's really inconvenient to say it, I won't force you. Why don't you find an opportunity to introduce me to this elder? Let me see the elegant demeanor of this senior. He still liked to walk the path of the higher ups. Don't always pull and pull, okay? Wei Chuanxiu pulled back her sleeve from Yu Qianqiu's hand and waved her hand with a dignified expression. Don't ask me this again in the future. This elder is not someone you can meet just because you want to. Everything depends on fate. If you are really fated to meet him, you will meet him sooner or later. All right. Don't get sidetracked, give the thing to Yunpeng. Yunpeng also nodded with a dignified expression as if he knew something about this elder. After observing their expressions, Yu Qianqiu knew that it was useless to continue asking. It seemed that he would have to start with Bai Suzhen if there was a chance in the future and let Bai Suzhen ask Wei Chuanxiu. Presumably, with Bai Suzhen's help, they would be able to dig out the identity of this mysterious elder from Wei Chuanxiu's mouth. The reason why he was so curious was that people of Wei Chuanxiu and Yunpeng's age and level generally wouldn't easily call anyone elder. Even with immortal Emperor Jin Tai's power, age, and cultivation, the two of them wouldn't call him elder. If there was someone older, the two of them might call him old ghost or something like that. But for someone like this to respectfully call him elder when he wasn't even in front of him, it was a bit strange. This person was most likely not simple. Chapter 976. Seeing the two's expressions, Yu Qianqiu knew that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of them. After some hesitation, he handed the 2 pieces of eggshells to Yunpeng. Yunpeng, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. If Yu Qianqiu was an outsider, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to directly snatch it. But because of his relationship with Wei Chuanxiu, if he accepted it, he would owe Yu Qianqiu a big favor. Wei Chuanxiu saw through his hesitation and directly took the things Yu Qianqiu handed over. He slapped them into Yunpeng's hands and smiled. Why think so much? Don't be polite with this kid. The eggs he's gesturing at are so big, I believe there are more than these 2 pieces. If you don't have enough, then find him. As he said this, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and teased, you won't be so stingy as to hide them from me, right? Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. Then, he asked curiously, since the Phoenix True Blood can help Senior Yun increase his cultivation, I wonder how much these 2 pieces can help you. Wei Chuanxiu only had a rough idea of this matter. The real inside story was probably only known by those who knew about it. He also looked at Yunpeng curiously. Yunpeng paused, his eyes flashed with a strange light. I can't say how much I can improve myself. The key is still how much Phoenix True Blood is on the eggshells. Maybe it's mid-stage Immortal Emperor, maybe it's late-stage Immortal Emperor, maybe, it's not impossible to step into the God realm. It all depends on my luck. When he said this, Wei Chuanxiu and Yu Qianqiu cried out in unison, God realm. Then, the two looked at each other in disbelief. Fuck. If he didn't invest now, then when? Yu Qianqiu steeled his heart and immediately took out the dozens of eggshells. He piled them into Yunpeng's arms without hesitation. Yunpeng looked at the pile of eggshells in his arms. His face, which had always been calm, was unusually excited. The word, thank you, jumped out of his mouth. He really didn't know what else to say. Well done. Wei Chuanqiu excitedly patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder with great strength. Immediately, Yu Qianqiu grimaced in pain. Wei Chuanqiu immediately apologized and helped him rub it. Yu Qianqiu shook off Yunpeng's claws with one arm and smiled brightly at Yunpeng. We're a family, so we should help each other. You're treating me like an outsider if you thank me. I've given you all the phoenix eggshells. I hope your cultivation is as high as possible, so that we don't have to look at other people's faces. He was also a person who could take and let go. When it was time to make a decision, he would make a decision. There was no need to hesitate. Although the Phoenix True Blood was precious, it didn't have much use for him at the moment. Rather than keeping it to himself, it was better to sell a huge favor. He believed in his own eyes. Although Yunpeng was a man of few words, he was a man of character. Today, he had helped Yunpeng with all his might. In the future, when Yunpeng became successful, he would definitely repay him generously. After seeing this scene, Wei Chuanxiu twirled his mustache and looked at Yu Qianzhou with a slight nod. His expression was full of praise. He didn't think that Yu Qianzhou would be so generous as to give such a precious phoenix eggshell to Yun Peng without reservation. However, what surprised him even more was still to come. He saw Yu Qianzhou take out a green bead the size of an egg. With a smile, he held it in his palm and brought it in front of him. Niden. Yun Peng was startled. He didn't understand what the two meant. He was right. It was indeed the Niden. Moreover, it was the Niden that Yu Qianzhou had stolen from Wei Chuanxiu. Looking at it now, it would most likely be returned to its original owner. Wei Chuanxiu naturally saw through Yu Qianzhou's intentions. He couldn't help but feel excited. He wasn't in a hurry to receive the item. Instead, he ridiculed, "What's wrong with you today? Could it be that you found your conscience and are ready to turn over a new leaf? Don't say such useless things. I already said, we're all one family. There's no need to say such things." Yu Qianzhou once again emphasized his philosophy of being a good person. He grinned and said, "I say, do you still want it? If you don't, then forget it." He acted as if he wanted to take it back. How could Wei Chuanxiu not want it? He opened his mouth and sucked. The green bead the size of an egg shone with a green light. It drilled into his mouth and went into his stomach. "This is your Niden? How did you condense a Niden?" Yun Peng's face was filled with shock. He didn't know that Wei Chuanxiu cultivated the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. Wei Chuanxiu glanced at Yu Qianzhou and smiled sheepishly, "Don't ask any more. When the opportunity is ripe, I'll naturally tell you the whole story." Yun Peng looked at Yu Qianzhou again. He couldn't figure out how Wei Chuanxiu's Niden ended up in Yu Qianzhou's hands. Seeing that Yun Peng still had a puzzled look, Wei Chuanxiu patted Yu Qianzhou's shoulder and changed the topic. "Kid, your luck is a little too good. You can even pick up a phoenix egg? Maybe it's because my luck is good." Seeing that his exaggerated words caused the two to roll their eyes at him, Yu Qianzhou immediately changed his words and sighed, "Luck my ass. Logically speaking, I picked up this egg and hatched it with my own hands. This little phoenix should be close to me. But it's strange. This little bastard is like an enemy to me. Instead, he's as close as a sister to Shui. So heartless. Her. This might be the problem of your character that you were talking about." Wei Chuanxiu patted his shoulder and used his words to stop him. In the end, Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and said, "Heartless. Speaking of that phoenix chick." After putting away the eggshell, Yun Peng pondered for a while and said, "Although there are probably only a few people in the immortal world who have seen a phoenix, we still have to be careful. It's best to make it appear less often. Otherwise, it might cause big trouble." Hearing that, Wei Chuanxiu's playful expression also froze and became somewhat serious. Yu Qianzhou looked at the two of them suspiciously and asked, "Why?" "Because the phoenix's descent means that the world is about to be in chaos," Wei Chuanxiu said in a deep voice. "There is such a saying." Yun Peng nodded and said, "Legend has it that a phoenix appeared 100,000 years ago. At the same time, it also brought with it a star orb that is said to be able to make people become gods. In the end, it caused a fierce battle between Jin Tai, Bai Qi, and the demon lord of 10,000 swords. That battle caused chaos in the three realms. Isn't this the sign that the phoenix's descent will cause the world to be in chaos? Although I don't know if it's a coincidence or if it's true, once others know that another phoenix has descended, the consequences can be imagined. Especially Jin Tai, I'm afraid he won't sit by and do nothing. So, it's better to keep this matter a secret." He had always been a man of few words. Today, he was able to say so many words of advice to Yu Qianzhou in one breath. It was obvious that he sincerely regarded Yu Qianzhou as one of his own. It was clear that Yu Qianzhou's generous act of buying people's hearts was effective. I understand. I'll go and tell them now so that they don't cause any unnecessary trouble. Yu Qianzhou turned and left with a solemn face. He naturally understood the seriousness of this matter. In the holy land of Baiwan nation's Wen family, in the forbidden area where Wen Lanfeng usually cultivated, Yan Zhuixing knelt on the ground, opened his arms and looked up to the sky. His expression was frighteningly distorted, and his nails had sunk deep into his palms. The blue veins on his forehead and neck were bulging ferociously. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face was flushed red. He knelt on the ground and shouted silently at the top of his lungs. After maintaining this state for a long time, he suddenly roared angrily, "Yu Qianzhou!" The continuous roar reverberated in the forbidden area. Fortunately, Wen Rui, who was standing respectfully at the side, had already set up a soundproof barrier. Otherwise, this roar would have alarmed everyone in the holy land of Wen family. Yan Zhuixing roared until there was no sound. Then, he hugged his head with his arms and fell to the ground. He curled up and panted heavily. His eyes were red as if he was a beast that wanted to eat a human. After being seriously injured by Yu Qianzhou last time, he hid in the Baiwan nation's imperial palace to recuperate. In order to maintain the smooth flow of information to the cultivation world, he set his eyes on Wen Lanfeng in the holy land of Wen family because he was confident that he could control Wen Lanfeng with his current cultivation. In the end, after sneaking into the holy land of Wen family with Shouchen's appearance, he did not find Wen Lanfeng after searching inside and outside. Instead, he found Wen Rui, who had been out of contact for a long time, and found that the other had broken free from the control of his demon eye. Wen Rui did not know Shouchen and was once again controlled by Yan Zhuixing due to carelessness. After asking, Yan Zhuixing found out that Yu Qianzhou already had a panacea in his hands to remove the control of his demon eye. Wen Lanfeng asked for a panacea to remove Wen Rui's control. After asking about Wen Lanfeng's whereabouts, he found out that Wen Lanfeng had long been summoned by Yu Qianzhou and had not returned. As for where he went, Wen Rui did not know due to Wen Lanfeng's secrecy. Since he'd taken control of Wen Rui once more, he couldn't avoid inquiring about the myriad Devil Palace and Flower Palace. He'd more or less sensed that with Yu Qianzhou's ruthlessness, Yu Qianzhou would probably not let the myriad Devil Palace and Flower Palace off. The result was not much different from what he had expected. Yu Qianzhou personally went to the Flower Palace to settle the score. Fortunately, Ma Jiugu of Fuxian Island arrived in time, and his mother and sister escaped. However, they were forced to leave the Flower Palace where they had lived for many years and fled to Fuxian Island. As for the Palace of 10,000 Demons, as expected, it had been completely razed to the ground. Yu Qianzhou had erased it from the face of the cultivation world. What made him most miserable was that his grandfather and father were forced to commit suicide in public to beg Yu Qianzhou to let the rest of the 10,000 demons go. In the end, after his grandfather and father shed their blood, Yu Qianzhou still killed the rest. The senior brothers left by Bing Chengzi also died together, and Yu Qianzhou did not let any of them go. At the thought of his grandfather and father being forced to commit suicide, Yan Zhuixing was in so much pain that he almost collapsed. He hated Yu Qianzhou, but he hated himself even more. He hated himself for being overconfident and not listening to his grandfather's advice. He hated himself for not knowing that there was always someone better out there. As a result, this disaster was brought upon him, and his family was forced to either die or escape. He fell to the ground with his head in his hands and quietly curled up. After a day and a night, he regained his indifference and slowly woke up from the ground. He gradually got up and walked out step by step. Wen Rui followed him respectfully. After a few steps, he saw Yan Zhuixing suddenly turn around and stare at him indifferently. "You don't need to follow me anymore. Just hide here and do what you should do. I hope I have a chance to summon you in the future." After saying that, he turned around and walked out with a resolute expression. Wen Rui respectfully saluted behind him and said, "This subordinate is always at master's command." Chapter 977. In Wenqing Palace, little Yan Yun's laughter continued. The demonic blade grew bigger and was swaying in the air while carrying him. Little Yan Yun shouted from time to time, "Father, shake it faster, shake it faster." Yan Juixing crossed his arms and looked at him with a doting expression. The hipster sat on the steps in the house with a blissful expression. Her knees were cushioned by a piece of white silk that was stretched tight with a bamboo strip. She was embroidering a butterfly that was about to fly. One of the pairs of butterflies had been embroidered, and the other one was almost done as well. It would be completed with just 2 tentacles. The hipster who was immersed in her embroidery would look up at the father and son from time to time. She would shake her head and smile warmly before continuing to embroider. She had completely shed the image of an unruly princess and was now a good wife and loving mother. Some people said that a good wife and loving mother was not born naturally. Most of them were formed after time. It was probably referring to women like her. She liked her current life very much and was very satisfied with it. The exciting cultivation world that Yan Juixing told her about was not tempting to her at all because it was too far away from her. She did not have too many desires and only hoped that her family could live peacefully like this. "Father, I want to ride a horse." Little Yan Yun, who was riding on the demonic blade, suddenly shouted. "Okay." Yan Juixing nodded amiably. The demonic blade flipped over and little Yan Yun landed in his father's arms with a cheer. The demonic blade also quickly shrunk and flashed into Yan Juixing's storage bag. Yan Juixing put down his son and knelt down on all fours. Little Yan Yun immediately climbed onto his back and sat on it, hitting Yan Juixing's butt with the back of his hand and shouting, "Giddy, giddy, giddy." Yan Juixing immediately smiled and quickly got up from the ground. Who would have thought that the great devil that shocked the cultivation world would do something like this? When the hipster saw this, her face immediately changed and she shouted, "Yan Yun, don't treat your father like this. Get down now." Yan Yun pouted. Yan Juixing immediately turned around and smiled at the hipster. "It's okay. If the kid wants to play, play with him." However, perhaps Yan Yun realized his mistake or was afraid of his mother who was fierce in appearance. He immediately slid down from Yan Juixing's back. "Why are you unhappy?" Yan Juixing raised his hand and scratched little Yan Yun's nose. Then, he carried him and sat beside hipster. Wenqing glared at the father and son pair, then continued to bury her head in embroidering her butterfly. Seeing that his son was still looking away with a straight face, Yan Juixing immediately turned his little head over and frowned. "Yun, don't be angry with your mother. Remember, when you grow up, you have to take good care of your mother, or I will be unhappy." Yan Yun pouted and said, "Don't I have father to take care of me?" His words obviously still remembered the hatred of Wenqing scolding him. He completely had the temperament of a child. "If father goes far away, can't you help father take care of mother?" As soon as Yan Juixing's words came out, Wenqing beside him trembled and suddenly turned to look at him. After the expression on her face changed for a while, she didn't see any other meaning from Yan Juixing. It seemed that he was just educating a child. She then lowered her head and continued to embroider her butterfly, but the stitches were messy. It seemed that she was a little absent-minded and worried about something. "Then I will take care of mother, but father, don't go too far away. Come back soon." Yan Yun threw himself on him and said while hugging his neck. Yan Juixing smiled and replied with an "N." He gently patted his back and asked, "If father goes far away, will you miss father?" Wenqing suddenly bit her lips while Yan Juixing glanced at her slightly. "Yes." "Why?" Yan Yun propped himself up and looked at Yan Juixing righteously. He said, "Because father is the most powerful person in the world. I will think that father will teach me to be the most powerful person in the world when he comes back." The most powerful person in the world? The scene of Yu Qianqiu severely injuring him and causing him to flee appeared in Yan Juixing's mind, but he still said, "Okay. It's a deal." He held his son in his arms again and looked outside the palace with a resolute gaze. He thought to himself, "Father won't let you down. When father comes back, you will see the most powerful father in the world. I will also train you to become the most powerful person in the world." After all, a child's physical strength and energy were limited. After playing for a while, he soon fell asleep on Yan Zhuixing's shoulder. Yan Zhuixing gently carried him into the room and settled him down. Then, he came out and sat beside Wenqing. He looked at Wenqing, who was embroidering and had a lot of thoughts. Finally finished. Wenqing heaved a sigh of relief and pulled Yan Zhuixing's thoughts back to reality. She said with a smile, "Let me see how good Madam's craftsmanship is." When he took the embroidery from Wenqing's hand, his nose slightly twitched and he smelled a little blood. He glanced at Wenqing's hand and saw a few small needle marks on her left index finger. Obviously, she was pricked by an embroidery needle. In fact, the embroidery needle was not sharp. It could be seen how absent-minded she was to be able to prick her finger. Yan Zhuixing looked at the embroidery carefully. There were 2 pairs of butterflies hovering on a big auspicious red peony flower. There were a few spots of blood beside the peony flower. Obviously, it was left by the embroidery needle when it pricked her hand. "It's really beautiful. I can almost smell the fragrance of the peony flower. And these 2 butterflies are almost alive. I didn't expect the dignified by one kingdom's princess to have such craftsmanship." Yan Zhuixing glanced at Wenqing, who was stunned at the side, and pointed at the tentacle of a butterfly. He shook his head and said, "But the stitches here are obviously not tight enough. It's a little messy. Little Qing, are you thinking of something?" Wenqing came back to her senses and stared at him. She bit her lip and said, "Are you leaving again?" Yan Zhuixing smiled and exerted force in his hand. The round bamboo strip with the white silk immediately shattered into dust. He shook the embroidery, folded it, and put it into his storage bag. He said with a smile, "I want to keep this embroidery with me. Whenever I see it, I will think of you and Yun-er." The meaning in his words was very obvious. He had already indirectly answered Wenqing's question. In fact, the conversation he had with his son before was to let her be mentally prepared. "Can you not leave me and Yun behind? Stop fighting and killing. Can't you just stay with us, mother and son, for the rest of our lives?" Hipster suddenly knelt down in front of him, hugging his leg as she pleaded. However, Yan Zhuixing's indifferent expression as he looked outside the palace made her unable to continue pestering him. She could only take a step back and squeeze out a forced smile. "Then how long will you be gone this time? When will you be back?" Yan Zhuixing turned around and reached out to caress her cheek. He said with a smile, "The reason I'm leaving this time is so that one day, our family can live together forever. I have already forged a demonic body and can live forever. Yun-er also has the aptitude for cultivation, so he can at least live for a long time. However, you. How can I bear to see you grow old alone?" The image of her white hair while her husband and son were still young appeared in Wenqing's mind. She couldn't help but shudder and didn't know what to do for a moment. When she woke up from her daze, she realized that she had already been carried by Yan Zhuixing to the bed in the inner room. Needless to say, it was another flood of erotic light. After their indulgence, the 2 of them hugged each other naked. Yan Zhuixing caressed her smooth body and sighed, "You don't have to worry about Yun-er's future. I have already made arrangements in secret. When he grows up and starts to understand, there will naturally be people who will teach him what to do. Could it be that you are so heartless to abandon us and leave on your own?" Wenqing sobbed as she lay on his chest. Father's vengeance is absolutely irreconcilable. Besides, there's still grandfather, master, and a group of senior brothers. As long as a man is courageous, how can he endure humiliation to live? Yan Zhuixing slowly told Wenqing the information he had obtained from Wenrui in detail, so that she could understand the deep hatred she had to bear. It's Yu Qianzhou again. Why does he always make life difficult for you? Wen Qing was gnashing her teeth in hatred. You are still young, only in your 20s. You still have many days to live. If there is still no news of me after 10 years, then don't wait for me. Change, find a good man and remarry. I don't blame you. After Yan Zhuixing said this, he ignored Wen Qing's crazy sobs and directly pushed her to the side. He got off the bed naked. He walked to the center of the spacious room barefoot. He raised his hand and the devil blade flashed into his hand from the storage bag on the floor. He grabbed the devil blade with his right hand and fiercely slashed the palm of his left hand. He clenched his left hand into a fist and fresh blood immediately dripped onto the bright and clean floor. Blood splattered everywhere and not long after, there was a large pool of bright red and dazzling blood on the floor. What are you doing? Wen Qing on the bed cried out in alarm. She jumped off the bed in a panic and hugged him. Yan Zhuixing suddenly turned around and stared at her coldly. Did I waste my words just now? Go back to the bed and don't ruin my plans. With a wave of his hand, Yan Zhuixing lightly threw her back to the bed and cried. When the blood on the floor had almost accumulated, Yan Zhuixing suddenly opened his bloody fist. Black killing intent immediately enveloped the bright red wound on his palm. The wound became smaller and smaller and soon, there was no scar at all. It was truly miraculous. Wen Qing was dumbfounded. Only then did she know that he wasn't harming himself. There was indeed an important matter. Then she saw him put his hands together and holding the devil blade in between his palms while muttering to himself. No one knew what he was chanting. When the devil blade in his palm started to shine with a faint red light, he single-handedly grabbed a corner of the devil blade and twisted it like a spinning top. The devil blade that was emitting a faint red light suddenly spun in the air like a red ball of light. It lightly floated down to the pool of blood on the floor and began to spin. The pool of blood on the floor also suddenly emitted a faint red light, shining dimly and dimly. On the obedient island of the demon domain, a strong wind suddenly rose in the surroundings, whistling incessantly as if it was going to blow the house away. Lady Mu, who was sitting cross-legged in the house, suddenly opened her eyes and teleported to the side of the 1,000-mile lake. The wind was abnormally strong, causing her white dress to flutter. She couldn't help but look around strangely. One must know that the obedient island had always been sunny. Apart from man-made factors, there had never been such a strong wind. Chapter 978. However, the strong wind was only a prelude. After a while, dark clouds began to gather in the surrounding sky. The clear sky above the 1,000-mile lake was rapidly compressed by the dark clouds, shrinking at a visible speed. The demons and ghosts around the 1,000-mile lake all looked in the direction of the lake in bewilderment, not knowing if something big was going to happen. Lady Mu had lived in the demon-ghost domain for many years, but she had never heard of such an abnormal phenomenon above the 1,000-mile lake. For a moment, she looked around in surprise. All of a sudden, the rippling lake water around the obedient island became completely still. Not only the surroundings, but even as far as the eye could see, the entire lake had become deathly still. Not even the wind could move it, causing one's heart to sink. Lady Mu quickly released her divine sense to scan the lake water around Obedient Island. As a result, she found that the fish in the water were fleeing in terror, as if something terrible was about to happen. With so many abnormal phenomena gathered together, Lady Mu did not dare to hesitate and quickly took out a silver ball. Yu Qianzhou had told her that if there was anything abnormal in the demon-ghost domain, she should immediately report to him. Moreover, it was such a strange phenomenon, so she did not dare to delay. Otherwise, if something happened, she, a small tree demon, could not bear the consequences. Regarding the affairs of the demon-ghost domain, although Yu Qianzhou was a hands-off manager, once something really happened, he would immediately take the top priority to deal with it. After all, The Demon Ghost Domain was the foundation of the Demon Ghost Immortal Exterminating Formation, the strongest line of defense against the strong enemies of the outside world. After receiving Lady Mu's call, Yu Qianzhou immediately put down everything he was doing and appeared on Obedient Island. However, as soon as he appeared, he was caught unprepared by the strong wind around him. He thought that he had gone to the wrong place, and then he realized that he had been ambushed. Purple flames quickly covered his body, and at the same time, he held the divine sword in his hand, intending to kill all the enemies who dared to ambush him. After quickly seeing the situation around him, he was slightly relieved. He immediately turned around and shouted angrily, "Lady Mu, what's going on?" Lady Mu was shocked by his powerful entrance with the divine sword in his hand and purple flames. His sharp and threatening murderous aura especially scared her so much that she was trembling with fear. Faced with the scolding, Madame Mu hurriedly bowed and said, "Mister, I don't know what's going on either. This abnormality happened just now." This little demon couldn't figure out the situation and didn't dare to delay, so she immediately summoned Mister to keep watch. Yu Qianzhou narrowed his eyes and stared sharply at Lady Mu's face. Seeing that she did not seem to be lying, he quickly retracted the purple flames and the divine sword. His robes fluttered in the wind. He then looked up into the sky and saw that the last ray of light had been completely annihilated by the dark clouds. From the looks of it, it was not far from Obedient Island. In the blink of an eye, the sound of the wind became even stronger, and the world became so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. There was a crackling sound of thunder in the sky, and bolts of lightning crisscrossed in the sky, illuminating Lady Mu's slightly frightened face. Ever since she grew up in the demon domain, she had never seen such a situation in the demon domain. Lady Mu looked at Yu Qianzhou with a panicked gaze. From time to time, bolts of lightning crisscrossed and flashed, illuminating Yu Qianzhou, who was standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Yu Qianzhou's expression was cold and emotionless. His eyes quickly swept around like an owl, and no one knew what he was thinking under his cold face. As the sky darkened and the thunder grew louder, a bright moon was held up by Yu Qianzhou, illuminating the surroundings with a vast expanse of whiteness. After the dazzling white light faded a little, the Heaven's Eye mirror showed the scene of a certain place in the demon domain. It was the entrance of the 9th Netherworld Cave. However, compared to the changes in the sky, the 9th Netherworld Cave was the same as usual. There was no abnormal phenomenon, eliminating the possibility of someone coming out of the Netherworld. Then, the scene in the Heaven's Eye mirror quickly changed, scanning the entire demon domain at an extremely fast speed. Nothing could escape Yu Qianzhou's eyes. However, the strange thing was that after using the Heaven's Eye mirror to inspect the entire demon domain, he found that other places were the same as usual. There was no change except for the sky above the 1,000-mile lake, which was shrouded by the inexplicable dark clouds. Thinking of the position where the last ball of light had disappeared in the sky, Yu Qianzhou's eyes fell directly on the position corresponding to the surface of the lake. Lady Mu didn't know what he had found, so she also looked in that direction. Almost at the same time, the deathly still surface of the 1,000-mile lake gradually began to ripple. To be exact, the lake water began to swirl. At the position they were looking at, with that place as the center, a whirlpool gradually appeared. Boom! A thunderbolt fell from the sky and directly struck the center of the whirlpool. Then, boom! 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 A series of dazzling greenish-white thunderbolts struck the center of the whirlpool. The scene was extremely strange. Lady Mu secretly glanced at Yu Qianzhou, thinking that he might have found something since he had looked at that position in advance. Yu Qianzhou frowned. There was no mention of such a thing in the past torturer's history. What was going on? Could it be that there was? Yu Qianzhou's twinkling eyes paused. His pupils suddenly shrank as he stared at the center of the whirlpool. He remembered that below that position was probably the sealed entrance to the demonic realm. Last time, he had dived down to check, and it was almost in that position. Could it be that the entrance to the demonic realm was about to open? Yu Qianzhou was shocked when he thought of this. If the demonic realm opened, all the demons and ghosts of the demonic realm would come out one after another. How could he resist them alone? In an instant, all kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. If that was really the case, he could activate the demonic ghost immortal punishing formation, and summon Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu to help. Even if the heroic army turned out in full strength and all the cultivators in the human world resisted with all their might, they probably wouldn't be able to resist the numerous heroes of the demonic realm. That was the strongest force in the three realms that had once suppressed the immortal and netherworld realms. Moreover, if the situation became critical, the cultivators in the human world might not be willing to stand firmly on his side. If only Master Bai Changchun was here. As the whirlpool gradually expanded, the lake water surged layer by layer. It wouldn't be long before it was level with the land of Shantian Island. When Yu Qianzhou thought of how the demonic ghost domain had been awe-inspiring in the human world for so long, but now it was going to be destroyed in the hands of his generation, he felt indignant. After a moment of malevolence, he suddenly condensed his 5 claws and stretched them towards the whirlpool in the lake. Under the illumination of the flashing lightning, snow-white frost rapidly spread across the surface of the lake with a "ga-ga" sound. In a short while, the huge area of the lake with the whirlpool as the center was frozen into a block. A whirlpool that was estimated to be 100 meters in diameter and dozens of meters deep was inlaid in the frozen lake. But it only paused for a few moments. A few bolts of lightning struck down and immediately smashed it into pieces. The lake water below stirred the ice and began to rotate again. Yu Qianzhou's 5 fingers moved again and immediately froze the whirlpool. However, a few more bolts of lightning fell from the dark clouds and easily shattered the frozen whirlpool. Yu Qianzhou didn't give in at all. He froze the whirlpool and the lightning in the dark clouds split apart. The two sides were in a stalemate. Realizing that this stalemate wasn't a solution, Yu Qianzhou's expression turned cold. After sealing the whirlpool, he didn't wait for the lightning in the sky to strike again. He flipped his 5 claws and clenched them into a fist. A ball of purple flames appeared in his palm. He raised it towards the sky and angrily shouted, "Scram!" The malevolent lightning in the sky immediately turned into weak arcs of lightning, faintly discernible in the dark clouds. As the thunder gradually died down, the arcs of lightning also gradually disappeared. As soon as Yu Qianzhou exerted force with the purple flames, he immediately felt that there was a mysterious force controlling the dark clouds in the sky. However, that force wasn't strong enough to resist the energy of heaven and earth that he controlled with the purple flames. Soon, the dark clouds in the sky seemed to have been punched through by his fist. They quickly melted and dispersed into the sky. Not long after, the sky above the 1,000-mile lake returned to blue skies and white clouds. However, the surface of the lake in front of him was now covered with a huge layer of crystal-clear ice. Lady Mu looked at Yu Qianzhou with lingering fear in her heart. She could feel the enormous energy under the pressure of heaven and earth just now. However, when Yu Qianzhou punched towards the sky, an even more enormous energy appeared. After he shouted angrily, "Scram!" the enormous energy that appeared later immediately crushed and assimilated the energy that the former had condensed. She couldn't imagine how high Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was. He was actually able to resist the power of heaven and earth. No wonder he was the torture envoy of the demon ghost region. The look in Lady Mu's eyes became more and more respectful. The power of the torture envoy was not something that she could resist. At this moment, she just wanted to do her part honestly. Yu Qianzhou wasn't in the mood to care about what she thought. He put away the purple flames and put down his raised fist. The scene in the Heaven's Eye mirror, in his other hand, once again swept across the entire demon ghost region. Yu Qianzhou's eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at the scene that flashed by quickly in the mirror. He refused to let go of the slightest suspicion. He concluded that the abnormality just now was definitely not a natural phenomenon. It had to be controlled by someone. Someone was actually targeting the demon ghost region, and it was targeting the sealed entrance to the demon realm. Currently, there were many people in the human world who had the ability and the need to do so. The first thought that came to Yu Qianzhou's mind was Yan Zhuixing. Except for Yan Zhuixing who practiced the devil skill, he couldn't think of anyone else in the human world who wanted to get in touch with the demon realm. His judgment was that Yan Zhuixing had been repeatedly defeated by him. After the last battle, Yan Zhuixing knew that there was a huge gap between their strength, so he targeted the demon realm. He was afraid that the demon realm would ask for reinforcements to deal with him. He couldn't let Yan Zhuixing succeed. For a moment, Yu Qianzhou was full of murderous intent and became much more vigilant. In the Wenqing palace of Baiwan country, Yan Zhuixing, who was standing naked, was shocked. He took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. He had just performed the great method of devil god to find the exact entrance to the demon realm, but it was inexplicably and forcibly interrupted. Immediately, he was backfired by the great method and harmed himself. The hipster cried out in alarm and ran off the bed naked to help him up, but he waved his arm to shake her off. Yan Zhuixing took a few steps forward and knelt in front of the hideous pool of blood, laughing wildly. The entrance to the demon realm, the entrance to the demon realm, I found it, I finally found it. Chapter 979. After a burst of ecstasy, Yan Zhuixing knelt in front of the pool of blood and cried again. No one knew what sad thing he was thinking of. The hipster, who was pushed to the ground by him, supported his body with some pain. Obviously, he was hurt by the fall. Looking at Yan Zhuixing who was crying, her expression was very complicated. Then her eyes fell on the ground in front of him that had condensed into a dark red color. On the ground, the blood had solidified. After the demonic blade rotated for a while, it left a strange picture. If one looked carefully, they would find that it was a macroscopic map of mountains and rivers. The demonic blade that had stopped rotating stood quietly in a certain position. There was a faint red light constantly flashing in that position. After crying for a while, Yan Zhuixing laughed wildly again. No one knew whether he was happy or sad. He straightened up, wiped his tears, pulled out the demonic blade, and knelt in front of the dark red geographical map of mountains and rivers to look at it carefully. However, when he saw the position of the demonic blade just now, the ecstatic expression on his face froze. He sat on the ground and muttered to himself with dull eyes, "The demon realm, it's actually the demon realm. The entrance to the demon realm is actually in the demon realm controlled by Yu Qianzhou." This was a huge blow to him. He had finally found the entrance to the demon realm, but he found that it was in Yu Qianzhou's territory. Now that he was afraid of Yu Qianzhou, if he asked him to go to the demon ghost domain, what was the difference between that and asking him to die? The most helpless thing was that the demon realm had always been mysterious to the entire cultivation world. He didn't know the specific situation in the demon realm at all, so he didn't dare to take risks. He was afraid that he would be discovered as soon as he broke into the demon realm. The room was silent for a long time, and then there was the rustling sound of the hipster's clothes. The hipster picked up Yan Zhuixing's clothes on the ground, walked gently to Yan Zhuixing's side, knelt down, and said softly, "Put on your clothes first." Then she took Yan Zhuixing's arm hard, helped him up, and quietly helped him put on his clothes. After she was dressed, she hugged his waist from behind and said softly against his back, "Listen to me. If it's too dangerous, it's better not to go. Isn't it good for our family to be safe and sound together?" Yan Zhuixing came back to his senses and sighed softly. He gently pulled away the soft hands on his abdomen and turned around to hold hipster's shoulders. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. One wrong step leads to many wrong steps. Now, it's not about whether I want to let go or not, but Yu Qianzhou won't let me go at all. As long as I stay here for another day, there's a chance that I'll give myself away, and you and your son will be in danger for another day. With his current power and influence, if he wanted to kill me, it would only be a matter of time before he found me. I know his nature all too well. That guy is vicious and merciless. Once he finds out about my relationship with you and your mother, I'm afraid that not only will he not let me off, he will also not let you and your mother off. Therefore, I must leave. For you and Yun, even if I have to divert his attention. Hipster shook her head in grief and indignation. Is there no one in this world who can control him? Are we just going to let him do whatever he wants in this world? No. No one in this world can be his opponent. Yan Zhuixing shook his head with certainty and said, it's a pity that there's no place for me in the human world. Otherwise, if I have time to cultivate the demonic skill, Yu Qianqiu won't be my opponent. It's not that I don't have a chance, but I've missed it. Now, he won't give me any more chances. He won't stop until he kills me. Hipster suddenly burst into tears. Yan Zhuixing gently pushed her away, turned around, and waved his hand toward the ground. The blood on the ground immediately turned into ashes. Then, he said, I should go. Take care of yourself and Yun. Black spirits emitted from all over his body, and in the blink of an eye, he turned back into Shouchen. His body turned into a shadow and flashed away. After flying out of the Green Wenqing Palace, he could still hear Hipster's cries. He took a deep breath and quickly flew toward the region of demons. Just as he said to Hipster, with Yu Qianqiu's monstrous power, it was only a matter of time before Yu Qianqiu found him. There was no longer a place for him in this world, and he had no way out. The only way was to find a way to hide in the demon world to cultivate and come out for revenge when the time was right. If it was really impossible, he didn't mind opening the passage to the demon world completely and letting the demons of the demon world out to wreak havoc in the human world. Of course, for Hipster and Yen Yun, as well as his mother and sister, he wouldn't do that until the last moment. However, he didn't go to the demon ghost region without any help. The only thing he could rely on was his changed appearance. He hoped to get close to the entrance to the demon world by deceiving people. It could be said that he spent a lot of time going to the demon ghost region, mainly because he wasted time on the journey. Avoiding the cultivators of the cultivation world was one reason. More importantly, he didn't dare to fly too fast and expose his cultivation. In order to avoid the search of various forces, he took a lot of detours. When he arrived at the demon ghost region, it was already a few days later. As soon as he entered the territory of the demon ghost region, he began to tremble with fear. He had long heard that the demon ghost region was full of demons and ghosts. He was afraid that the slightest movement would alarm Yu Qianqiu. He was very careful along the way. He was gambling, and he had to take the risk. Of course, he still had a way out. Once he met Yu Qianqiu, he would use the blood escape to escape. However, the strange thing was that the entire demon ghost region was terrifyingly quiet. There was no sound at all. He flew stealthily all the way. Although he saw a lot of demons and ghosts, none of them discovered him. After half a day, there was no accident or trouble at all. This made him feel a little guilty. He even thought of turning back and escaping. However, in the end, he made up his mind and decided to gamble. Maybe Yu Qianqiu wasn't in the demon ghost region. Moreover, how could he not take risks when he wanted to achieve great things? He didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had already ordered the entire demon ghost region to monitor all suspicious people who broke into the demon ghost region. From the moment Yan Zhuixing stepped into the demon ghost region, he was already discovered by a tree demon. This was because Yan Zhuixing happened to hide in the bushes where he was for a while. Perhaps he thought that the trees were dense and suitable for hiding. However, the tree demon didn't alarm him. After he went far away, it quickly sent the news to the local demon king. The demon king also sent the news to Obedient Island as fast as possible. Humph. You're as adventurous as me. You still came after all. There was a way to heaven, but you didn't take it. There's no door to hell, but you still came. Let's see where you can escape this time. Yu Qianqiu sneered. He had been guarding Obedient Island for a few days. As soon as he received the news, the Heaven Eye Mirror, which was already scanning around, immediately locked on to the person who came. Looking at the stranger floating in front of him in the Heaven Eye Mirror, Yu Qianzhou already determined that he was the incarnation of Yan Zhuixing. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to run to the demon ghost region. Moreover, the direction he came from was Obedient Island of the 1,000-mile lake. Yu Qianzhou didn't rush to kill him. Instead, he quietly waited for Yan Zhuixing's arrival. Yan Zhuixing had escaped twice with the blood escape technique, which had taught him a lesson. The blood escape technique of the demonic technique was too strange. Once he escaped, he wouldn't even know where the opponent was going. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to kill him. He wanted to let Yan Zhuixing come in. He wanted to see if Yan Zhuixing could escape from the central region of the demon ghost domain. Given how vast the demon ghost domain was, once he used the blood escape, he would be able to escape. If he couldn't, as long as he was still in the demon ghost region, his eyes and ears would be able to find him. He didn't believe that Yan Zhuixing had so many broken limbs to use the blood escape technique. Staring at the sneaky guy in the Heaven Eye Mirror, Yu Qianzhou's lips curled into a sinister smile. In fact, he was somewhat certain that with Yan Zhuixing's current cultivation, using the blood escape technique wouldn't be enough to escape from the vast demon ghost region. Therefore, he cast a large net and prepared to wait for the rabbit. With Yan Zhuixing's current cultivation, it would take him less than a day to fly to Obedient Island at his fastest speed. However, it took him several days to stealthily approach the edge of the 1,000-mile lake. Along the way, he felt that the region was too deep. If an accident happened, he wouldn't be able to escape from the demon ghost region in one go. In the midst of hesitation, he even wanted to retreat. His actions almost caused Yu Qianzhou to chase after him. However, after careful consideration, Yan Zhuixing felt that it shouldn't be a problem for him to escape. He hadn't been discovered until now. Even if he couldn't escape with the blood escape technique, he was confident that he could hide. This judgment was established on the basis that he was certain that he hadn't been discovered. Based on his understanding of Yu Qianzhou, if Yu Qianzhou had really discovered him, he would definitely rush over to kill him. How could he have waited until now? His judgment was correct. If Yu Qianzhou had suddenly discovered him, then he would definitely have chased after him without a second word, just as he had expected. However, what he didn't know was that when he used the Great Demon God technique to find the entrance to the demon world, he had caused too much of a commotion. This made Yu Qianzhou understand his purpose of coming, so he planned to wait for him to walk into the trap. Therefore, some things were predestined. Seeing that he had returned, Yu Qianzhou heaved a sigh of relief and cursed in his heart. Yan Zhuixing hid by the side of the 1,000-mile lake for a long time. He silently recalled the location of the entrance to the demon world, then quietly dove into the 1,000-mile lake. After observing his surroundings in the water, he found that the fish were swimming leisurely. Feeling that there shouldn't be any danger, he held the demon blade in his hand and unhurriedly dashed in the direction he remembered. Damn! This guy is really careful. Yu Qianzhou looked at the figure disappearing into the 1,000-mile lake through the Heaven's Eye Mirror and cursed. The Heaven's Eye Mirror was good, but it couldn't see into the soil and water. Once Yan Zhuixing dove into the water, he could only see the vast 1,000-mile lake, but not the situation underwater. This was somewhat unexpected. After putting away the Heaven's Eye Mirror, Yu Qianzhou, who was standing by the side of the lake, directly dove into the lake. Chapter 980. As he dived deeper and deeper, the azure blue waves slowly turned dark, and the water became colder and colder. His current cultivation was much higher than before, and with the help of his water arts, the huge pressure of the lake was no longer able to stop him from diving deeper. His vision gradually turned pitch black, and he could hear the sound of his body shuttling through the water. Not long after, a faint white light appeared at the bottom of the quiet lake. With his previous experience, Yu Qianzhou was not surprised at all, and quickly scuttled over. A white jade-like barrier of light hung at the bottom of the lake, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. One could vaguely see the underwater mountain range, especially the pillar that rose up to the surface of the lake, the peak of which was the obedient island. The strange deep-water fish that were leisurely swimming in the surroundings suddenly fled in fright from the sudden appearance of a human figure. Yu Qianqiu descended on the light barrier and used all of his power to press down on it. As expected, he found that the defense set up by the 10,000 Swords Demon Monarch was not easy to destroy. He then relaxed and quickly checked the surroundings of the light barrier, memorizing the general terrain in his mind. After identifying the direction Yan Zhuixing came from, he lightly landed behind a rock at the bottom of the lake. He took out a silver-white straw cape and put it on. After shaking it a bit, the cape flashed with white light, and he disappeared at the bottom of the lake. This straw cape was the spoils of war from the battle with the 4 island sect masters at the mystic immortal city's life and death mound. Its function was to hide underwater, and even spiritual sense could not detect it. It was a good item for hiding underwater. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding behind the rock, gently took out his divine sword. This time, he had made up his mind to deal a fatal blow to Yan Zhuixing. He definitely could not let him escape. As for whether killing Yan Zhuixing would attract the demon god behind him to deal with him, he was no longer as apprehensive as before. Judging from the cause and effect, he believed that the demon god should have some misgivings in the deity realm. If he could directly intervene and help Yan Zhuixing, he would be the one hiding everywhere, and not Yan Zhuixing. Time passed bit by bit. The sun, moon, and stars could not be seen in the world under the lake. Who knew how much time had passed? Yu Qianqiu's patience did not go to waste. After the distant deep-water fishes fled in panic, he immediately became spirited, knowing that what should come had come. Hence, he poked his head out from behind the rock to look around. He wasn't worried that the other party would discover him anyway. Under the illumination of the light shield, the magic blade, which was more than 10 meters long, shone with a faint cold light. It stood upright at the bottom of the water and opened a path, giving off the feeling of a sailboat or the dorsal fin of a shark. Yan Zhuixing stood in the inner arc of the magic blade, holding the back of the blade with one hand, carefully observing his surroundings. He stopped about 200 meters away from the light barrier and looked at the transparent white light barrier in front of him with an expression of ecstasy. He had been on tenterhooks along the way and had finally arrived at his destination. However, he did not let his happiness get to his head. Instead, he calmed down and scanned his surroundings. He was not in a hurry to get close to the light barrier. Instead, he steered the magic blade around slowly. Damn it! Cowardly bandit, you are already here, what's the use of being careful? The invisible Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. However, he was not worried. At this point, even if Yan Zhuixing found something suspicious, he believed that he would risk his life. Even if he wanted to escape, it was too late. However, he did not want any accidents to happen. After all, it was still unknown whether the other party could escape the range of the demon domain in one go with the blood escape. He still had to wait for the right opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Yan Zhuixing, who was carefully searching around, used his eyes and divine sense to look around. After confirming that there was no problem, he circled around and returned to his original place. There was an excited expression on his face. The magic blade shrank and returned to his hand. He boldly rushed to the front of the light barrier, touched the light barrier with his hand, and looked through the light barrier to see the situation inside. Inside the light barrier was a pile of ferocious stone forest. In the middle, there was an ancient cave door that looked like a cave. There was no door at the entrance, but a piece of iron covered with all kinds of strange runes sealed the entire cave entrance. This should be the masterpiece of immortal Emperor Jin Tai and Emperor of the Underworld Bai Qi. Yu Qianqiu had seen the situation inside when he came, but that was not what he wanted to care about. At this moment, the distance between the two sides was less than 10 meters. The corner of Yu Qianzhou's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He slowly raised the divine sword in his hand. With the sharpness of the divine sword, he was confident that he could kill Yan Zhuixing in one move. Just as Yan Zhuixing was about to use the magic blade to break the light barrier, there was a sudden explosion behind him. It was the kind of explosion that came from something moving at high speed in the water. Moreover, it was very close. Yan Zhuixing did not have the time to react in shock. The magic blade that he used had already disappeared above him like lightning. Boom! With a loud sound, Yan Zhuixing turned around and was immediately hit by a strong impact on the light barrier. However, the moment he turned around, he saw with his own eyes the scene of the demonic blade being sent flying by a light golden longsword. This light golden longsword was shocking to him. It was the one that Yu Qianzhou had used to injure him last time. It was Yu Qianzhou. A thought flashed through Yan Zhuixing's mind. I've fallen into a trap. In a flash, he realized that Yu Qianzhou had waited patiently until now to make a move. It was obvious that he had been deliberately waiting for him. In an instant, he understood why he could come here safely. Yan Zhuixing was instantly scared out of his wits. He knew that the other party had planned to kill him. Even if he used the blood escape, he would not be able to escape from the other party's control in the demon region. What if there was no way to escape? Magic fist. Yan Zhuixing punched the transparent light barrier almost without hesitation. He had no way out now. He was not Yu Qianzhou's opponent even if he fought. The only way out was to risk his life and charge into the demonic world. Boom! He easily punched a hole in the transparent light barrier, and Yan Zhuixing rushed in recklessly. However, the moment he rushed in, the longsword that had sent the demonic blade flying quickly stabbed towards him, directly piercing through his chest from his back to his chest. Ah! Yan Zhuixing screamed. With a bloody hole in his chest, he fell into the light barrier. He clutched his chest and rolled on the ground, appearing to be in extreme pain. The moment he rushed in, the light barrier closed at the same time. Bang! F***ck. The sound of the collision was accompanied by curses. The invisible Yu Qianzhou hit the light barrier and was bounced back. He immediately lifted the bamboo hat on his head and revealed his true appearance. He dashed over and punched the light barrier angrily. However, there was only a muffled sound from the light barrier, and a ripple appeared. The force that he exerted was completely offset. Yu Qianzhou looked at his own fist in disbelief. He could not imagine that he could not break open something that Yan Zhuixing could smash open with one punch. There was no justice in this world. At this moment, a black shadow flitted by and directly broke through the light barrier. It floated beside Yan Zhuixing, who was rolling on the ground. It was the magic blade that was knocked away. Yu Qianzhou glanced at it. Without saying a word, he grabbed the flying sword and slashed at the light barrier. However, when the sword hit the light barrier, it was like hitting a pile of cotton. It could not break the light barrier at all. F***ck. I don't believe it. Yu Qianzhou was instantly enraged. Yan Zhuixing's men could easily enter, and so could the magic blade. Whether it was his cultivation or the divine sword in his hand, they were stronger than the other party, but he just could not enter. This was really absurd. He held the divine sword with both hands and slashed at the light barrier crazily. However, no matter how sharp the divine sword was, it seemed to be unable to do anything to the light barrier. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing, who had a short period of self-healing, slowly climbed up. His chest and back emitted a black aura that wrapped around his wounds and kept healing them. After a while, his wounds were healed. The pale Yan Zhuixing raised his head and looked at the almost crazy Yu Qianzhou outside. A sneer gradually appeared on his face. Then, it turned into a maniacal laughter. He waved his arms high and said, "I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it. Yu Qianzhou, so what if you tried your best? It's a pity that man proposes but God disposes. God is indeed helping me. The laughter inside was unusually ear-piercing to Yu Qianzhou's ears. Yu Qianzhou, who was fuming with anger, stopped his useless slashes. He pointed at Yan Zhuixing and shouted, "Yan Zhuixing, don't be a coward if you are so capable. Come out and fight me to the death if you are a man." Yan Zhuixing had a mocking expression on his face. He sneered and said, "This day will come, but not now. When I come out of the demonic world, it will be the time of your death." After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the sealed cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest. "Stop right there." Yu Qianzhou held his sword and shouted angrily, "Yan Zhuixing, if you don't come out, I will immediately go to Fuxian Island and execute your mother and sister." Yan Zhuixing suddenly stopped and turned around. His expression twitched and he said with a ferocious expression, "Yu Qianzhou, there is no need to provoke me. I believe you can do it. Go ahead and kill them. One day, I will get it back from you with interest." It was as if he wanted to engrave Yu Qianzhou's appearance in his mind. His eyes were burning with anger. He stared at Yu Qianzhou without moving and slowly retreated into the depths of the stone forest. "Bastard! Come out if you have the guts." Yu Qianzhou shouted anxiously outside the light barrier. If he opened the passage to the demonic world for Yan Zhuixing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, he raised his sword and slashed randomly. He couldn't figure out which side the demon lord of 10,000 swords was on. The formation that he laid down could actually defend against his own people but not others. After a series of slashes and slashes, there was no effect. In a moment of desperation, a ball of purple fire appeared in his palm and condensed the temperature to the highest. The purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier. This was originally a desperate move because, in his understanding, the power of the divine sword was stronger than the purple fire. However, the strange thing was that after the purple fire palm slapped on the light barrier, the huge light barrier actually trembled. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but let out an "bah." He could feel the light barrier slowly thinning where his palm was pressed. In just a short while, the fire palm burned a hole in the light barrier, and his palm directly reached in. Yu Qianzhou immediately shouted excitedly, "Yan Zhuixing. Don't even think of running away today." Chapter 981. When Yan Zhuixing saw this, he was shocked. He hurriedly dashed to the cave dwelling in the depths of the stone forest, bit his finger, and drew a rune on the iron seal, "Don't run. F***ck. Yu Qianzhou was exasperated. When he came to his senses, he realized that the hole was only the size of a palm, and he couldn't get in at all. But who would have thought that as soon as he pulled his hand out, the palm-sized hole in the light barrier would immediately close up. It was easy to deal with it now that he knew how to deal with it. Yu Qianzhou's body emitted a ball of purple fire, and his whole body stuck to the light shield, wanting to burn a hole and enter directly. Yan Zhuixing looked back and immediately panicked. It would take some time to use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal. It was not as fast as Yu Qianzhou burning the light shield. He immediately said angrily, "Yu Qianzhou, don't force me. If you force me, I don't mind opening the passage to the demonic world by force. When the demons wreak havoc in the human world, no one will have a good time. Don't F***king fool me here. Didn't you come here to open the passage to the demonic world?" Yu Qianzhou was also burning with anxiety. He raised the temperature of the purple fire to the highest. He was really in a hurry, afraid that Yan Zhuixing would open the passage to the demonic world before he entered. "Yu Qianzhou, I swear to the demonic god that I definitely did not lie to you." Yan Zhuixing was anxious, and he realized that he had drawn the wrong demonic rune on the iron seal. He was so sad that he almost cried. He had to redraw it again, but the god of plagues was chasing him from behind. Where would he find the time? He then continued to explain as he redrew, Yu Qianqiu, I don't mind telling you that if I wanted to enter the demonic world before I got the demonic blade, I could only open the seal by force. But it's different now. I have the demonic blade, and I can use the demonic god technique to enter the demonic world from the seal without destroying the seal. Don't give me that. Go and lie to your dead grandfather and your dead father. Yu Qianqiu blurted out. He didn't even consider whether Yan Zhuixing was telling the truth or not. He just seized the time to destroy the light barrier. Bastard, I'm telling the truth, yet you don't believe me. Yan Zhuixing also cursed out of desperation. His tone seemed to be similar to Yu Qianqiu's. He roared, do you really want to force me to open the seal of the demonic world by force? Hee hee. These tricks are all my leftovers. Looking at you, I guess it will take some time to open the passage to the demon realm. Yu Qianqiu's face had already squeezed through the light barrier, and he was smirking evilly. His body was about to enter as well. When Yan Zhuixing saw this, his expression immediately became distorted. Yu Qianqiu, don't regret it. You forced me to do this. The roar reverberated endlessly, and the demon blade angrily drew a pentagonal pattern on the hard iron seal. Bloody Finger also drew a pentagonal pattern floating in the air, and a spell was cast on it. The floating pentagonal pattern burst into red light, and it burst onto the iron seal, fusing with the pentagonal pattern on it. Damn it! This guy really pretended to be serious. It can't be true, right? Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered as he watched Yan Zhuixing's actions. He felt that he was about to break through the light barrier. He thought to himself, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. As long as I kill that guy, everything will be over. Yu Qianqiu. You will regret your actions today. Yan Zhuixing roared angrily. He turned around and pointed at the center of the pentagonal pattern on the iron seal. He said sternly, the power of the demon god is invincible. Break! The floating demonic blade suddenly burst into red light and crashed into the center of the pentagonal pattern. First, there was a burst of dazzling light, followed by a boom sound. The accumulated silt at the bottom of the lake floated up. The powerful shock caused Yu Qianqiu to stagger. After he steadied himself, he tragically discovered that he had retreated at the wrong time. The light barrier that was about to shatter had actually closed up again. Yan Zhuixing suddenly looked back and saw that Yu Qianqiu had retreated. He thought that Yu Qianqiu had realized his mistake and turned back. He shook his head with grief and indignation. It's too late. It's too late. The iron seal on the cave abode behind him had disappeared without a trace. Inside the cave abode, a black light the size of a fist was slowly rotating and expanding. Yu Qianqiu leaned on the light barrier and looked at it dumbfoundedly. He had participated in the Divine Ruin Realm convention and knew what the expanding black light in the cave abode meant. It meant that the gate to a certain realm had opened. The gate to the demonic realm had opened. Oh my God! Yu Qianqiu immediately roared, bastard! What have you done? It's true, why didn't you tell me earlier? Fuck you. I have told you several times. You didn't listen and forced me to do this. Yan Zhuixing roared angrily. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. It seemed that the other party had emphasized it again. However, he was certain that it was not his fault. He immediately roared, with your character, do you think I can believe your words? Then what the fuck do you want me to say to you? Yan Zhuixing roared and turned around. He saw the black light rotating like a dark cloud in the cave abode. The passage to the demonic realm had been completely opened. He immediately watched Yu Qianqiu slowly retreat into the rotating black light. He gritted his teeth and said, Yu Qianqiu, aren't you known as the #1 expert in the world? Then think of a way to protect the human world. I hope that when I return, you will still be alive. At that time, I will settle the old and new grudges. As his voice disappeared, Yan Zhuixing's figure also disappeared. He was swallowed by the rotating black light and left the human world that he had lived in regardless of his emotions. The grudges between him and Yu Qianzhou had temporarily come to an end. B****. Yu Qianzhou could only watch as Yan Zhuixing left. He angrily punched the light barrier. If he knew this would happen, he would have disregarded everything and chased Yan Zhuixing outside the 1,000-mile lake. There was no need to make things so messy. Just when he was extremely annoyed, he suddenly felt that his punch on the light barrier had caused the entire barrier to shake violently. Yu Qianzhou looked at his own fist in shock. Previously, he didn't even have such great power when he used all his strength. How could a casual punch have such great power now? What kind of rubbish construction is this? Could this be a sign that the demons from the demonic realm are coming out? Yu Qianzhou clenched the divine sword in his hand tightly and stared at the exit of the demonic realm. Suddenly, he couldn't help but exclaim. The exit of the demonic realm didn't have any movements for the time being. Instead, the light barrier that had been shaking violently seemed to be shrinking. Looking at the marks on the ground, he confirmed that he wasn't mistaken. Not only was the light barrier shrinking, but it was also shrinking faster and faster. The area of the huge light barrier was shrinking, but the light was becoming more and more dazzling. In a short moment, it had shrunk into a ball of strong light and condensed at the exit of the demonic realm. Immediately after, the strong light quickly rotated and suppressed the black light at the entrance. Boom! A loud sound burst out from the entrance of the cave. The light suddenly burst out and was so dazzling that Yu Qianzhou couldn't open his eyes. After the mountain shaking and the earth calmed down, Yu Qianzhou opened his eyes. Without the light from the light barrier, it was pitch black in front of him. With his super eyesight, he could only see the mud at the bottom of the lake floating everywhere. It was a blur and he couldn't see the situation in front of him clearly. Yu Qianzhou looked around in bewilderment. He put on the bamboo hat behind his head and turned invisible again. He quietly floated towards the exit of the demonic realm. He didn't dare to get too close. He hid behind a rock in the stone forest and watched. He was worried that some expert from the demonic realm would come out. When the floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually settled down, he finally saw the situation at the entrance of the cave. He was dumbstruck and lifted the bamboo hat on his head again. The floating mud at the bottom of the lake gradually calmed down. Everything in front of him gradually became clear. The swirling black light in the cave abode had disappeared. The seal that Yan Zhuixing had opened was now sealed by another iron seal with a pattern of patterns. What was going on? It couldn't be an illusion, right? Yu Qianzhou flashed to the front of the cave. He held the divine sword and looked around suspiciously. Then, he touched the solid iron seal with his own hands. He discovered that the entrance to the demonic realm had been sealed again. It was simply unimaginable. Yu Qianzhou felt relieved. However, an even greater doubt arose in his heart. He asked himself what was going on. He walked around the outside of the cave and looked at the light barrier that had disappeared. The place was pitch black. The pearl at the bottom of the lake that had supported the demonic realm for more than 100,000 years had disappeared. He immediately understood. Needless to say, the mastermind behind the demonic realm being sealed again must be the person who laid the light barrier outside the seal. It was the demon monarch of 1,000 swords who had been dead for more than 100,000 years but still exerted his remaining power and influenced the three realms to this day. However, what Yu Qianzhou couldn't understand was, could it be that the demon monarch of 1,000 swords knew that someone would open the demonic realm seal more than 100,000 years ago, so he made arrangements in advance? If he really had such divine foresight, how could he have died in the hands of Jin Tai and Bai Qi? What puzzled Yu Qianzhou the most was, why could Yan Zhuixing and his demonic blade easily break into the formation, but he himself couldn't break in even after expending so much effort and energy? Could it be that the demon monarch of Thousand Swords already knew that someone in the human realm could cultivate demonic arts? So he set up this formation to wait for the person who cultivated demonic arts to open the passageway to the demonic realm? Then, after the person entered the demonic realm, he sealed the demonic realm again so that the person in the demonic realm couldn't come out? Thinking about it, it seemed that everything was possible, but there were many doubts. However, there was one thing that he vaguely understood. After coming into contact with the light barrier, he vaguely felt that the formation of this light barrier was related to the purple flames in the world. Otherwise, how could the purple flames fuse and break something that even a divine sword couldn't break? There was also the heaven and earth universe formation set up in the eastern Holy Lands. It was also set up using the energy of the purple flames of the world. These two formations were undoubtedly created by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. It was very obvious that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord had some understanding of how to use the energy of the purple flames of the world. The heaven and earth Chinquan array was like this, and so was the array at the entrance of the demon realm. Could it be that the demonic ghost immortal execution array and the soul transforming smoke array outside the immortal ascension stage were also like this? If everything related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords was related to the purple fire energy, then would the release of the divine dragon locked underground also be related to the purple fire energy? If this assumption was true, then the things that happened in these places were more or less related to him, and he just so happened to know how to use the purple flames. Didn't that mean that all the blame was on him? Chapter 982. On second thought, he felt that he was just imagining things. The strange places in the human world were all masterpieces left behind by the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch before he died. They were all targeted at the people of the immortal world and the netherworld, especially the people of the immortal world, who had a hint of unwillingness to die. Looking at the divine sword in his hand, he muttered in his heart. Where did the remaining 9,999 divine swords go? It was said that the demon monarch of swords died in this world, so the remaining divine swords should be in this world. Why didn't he leave any trace? Where did he hide them? If he could collect all the remaining divine swords and control them to fight against the enemy, how many people could stop him? That feeling must be very pleasurable. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and smiled bitterly. He felt that he wanted to be the second demon monarch of swords. It was a bit whimsical. He put away the divine sword and looked back at the sealed entrance to the demon world. He didn't know whether Yan Zhuixing's trip to the demon world was a good or bad thing. Would he really come out alive to take revenge as he wished? Even the demon monarch of the demon world couldn't open the seal of the demon world from the inside. Did Yan Zhuixing have that ability? It probably wouldn't be that easy to come out. Otherwise, the seal left by the demon monarch of swords would be worthless. Even if he had that ability, would he, Yan Zhuixing, really open the seal of the demon world and let the heroes of the demon world wreak havoc in the human world? Yu Qianzhou shook his head and denied this idea. From Yan Zhuixing's previous actions, it could be seen that he still had a bottom line. Unless he had no other choice, he wouldn't be willing to let the people of the demon world out easily. After all, his family was still in the human world. Unless he had the ability to lead the heroes of the demon world, opening the seal of the demon world wouldn't benefit him at all. Brother Yan, revenge breeds revenge. When will it end? You'd better die in there. That way, everyone will be saved from trouble. Yu Qianzhou looked at the seal of the demon world and murmured. He was too lazy to think about it anymore. In short, even if Yan Zhuixing could come out, it wouldn't happen in a short time. It was a good thing that he was gone. At least the human world didn't have to worry about him for the time being. He then dashed to the surface of the lake quickly. How is she? In Furong's room, Yu Qianzhou looked out of the window for a long time and asked this question. The person he was asking was none other than the enchantress of 100 charms that he had always been in a dilemma. Furong, who was behind him, reached out to hold his arm. She shook her head slightly and said, she doesn't seem to care about what happened that day, but anyone can see that her smile isn't as beautiful as before. What's the point? Yu Qianzhou shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was unknown whether he was talking about himself or the allure seductress. Furong turned around and looked at him. She bit her lip and pondered for a while. She seemed to be a bit hesitant, but in the end, she still couldn't help but ask softly, "Can you tell me about you and her?" At that time, I had just stepped into the cultivation world. Perhaps because he had just recalled this point, when Hibiscus asked, Yu Qianzhou directly told the story of how he met the enchantress until now with a confused look in his eyes. His tone was a little helpless. After listening, Hibiscus was silent for a moment before saying, "It seems like Sister Yi really likes you." Yu Qianzhou shook his head slightly and said, "In the human world, perhaps I can be considered a relatively successful man. Oftentimes, this kind of man has an irresistible attraction to women. If it was an ordinary, worthless man, how many women would fight to be the first to like him? Especially an outstanding woman like her. I hope she can calm down and not be fooled by the illusion in front of her eyes. In the immortal world, there are many men stronger than me. Perhaps when she sees them in the immortal world, then everything will pass. It's just a momentary impulse. She gave up her position as the sect master for you." Hibiscus gently reminded him, then asked a rather philosophical question, "Do you have no confidence in yourself or in her? You don't seem to dislike her." These words seemed familiar. He seemed to have heard them in his previous life. Yu Qianzhou turned his head to look at her in surprise. He smiled faintly and said, "It's said that silent people are the best at observing and thinking. I've somewhat underestimated you. No matter when, no matter what you do, I will never underestimate you." Hibiscus lowered her head and softly muttered. Then she raised her head and said, "You should go see her." Yu Qianzhou hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "Let's go together." The reason why he called Hibiscus to go together was because he didn't want to face the temptress alone. However, when he knocked on the door of the temptress's room, he found that there was no need. The women were all in the temptress's room chattering, thinking of ways to make her happy. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou had come, the women looked at him and then at the temptress. After the two of them looked at each other, the temptress was still smiling, but Yu Qianzhou seemed to have a guilty conscience as he smiled and said, "They're all here. He. Then you guys talk, I won't disturb you guys. We want to go out and play." Ze had already jumped in front of him and shouted. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, "Now that the Heartless Palace's people are watching, it might not be convenient for you guys to go out. Wait for a while. It's so uncomfortable to stay in the room every day. It's so boring." Ze pouted and said. Yu Qianzhou looked at the women and said hesitantly, "Do you want me to teach you guys a fun game?" The women looked at each other, but Ziyi's eyes lit up and she cheered, "Okay. Okay. Wait for me for a while." After saying that, Yu Qianzhou left. After about an hour, he came back with a box and walked to the table in the living room. He opened the box and poured out a pile of small purple cubes. The women surrounded him curiously, and they all looked confused. They didn't know what it was. Ze reached out and grabbed a handful, and said with her eyes wide open, This is made from the bamboo of the purple bamboo forest. You chopped my master's purple bamboo? Yu Qianzhou did go to the South Sea purple bamboo forest to make this thing. He said disapprovingly, "There are so many bamboos, and they can't be eaten. What's wrong with chopping one? Why are you being so long-winded? If you don't want to play, then go away." "Who said I don't want to play? It's just that when Master finds out, he will definitely scold me." Ze pouted and flipped the things in her hands. She realized that there were all kinds of patterns carved on them. Suddenly, she said in surprise, 80,000, 30,000, east. What are these lines? Middle, 10,000, south. The women also grabbed a few of them and muttered. There were many patterns that they couldn't say, and they looked at each other in confusion. It seemed like no one could recognize what Yu Qianzhou was making. Wow! Bamboo, it's purple bamboo. I want to eat tender bamboo. Where can I find the tender bamboo of purple bamboo? The wild chicken, who was resting on Wu Lishua's shoulder, heard the bamboo and slowly opened its eyes. When it saw the purple bamboo, its eyes lit up. It jumped up and down on Wu Lishua's shoulder and said, "Shuai, I want to eat the tender bamboo of purple bamboo. This is my favorite food." Zi immediately bared her teeth at the wild chicken. Wu Lishua looked at Yu Qianzhou awkwardly. Yu Qianzhou touched his chin and said, "Wild chicken, how much do you know about this purple bamboo?" The wild chicken's eyes showed that it was thinking like a human. It then shook its head and said, "I have a vague impression of it, but I can't remember. Maybe after I go through another calamity, I will remember." Bad guy, did you get this bamboo? Where did you get it? Take me there. I want to eat it. Bad guy? Yu Qianzhou sneered and said, "If you remember, then eat it. If you don't remember, then don't eat it." The wild chicken immediately flapped its wings and flew in front of him. It begged, "No. No. I want to eat it. Get lost." Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and pushed it to the side, ignoring its protest and cries. He then waved at the women and said, "This thing is called mahjong. I will teach you how to play it now. You know from 1 to 90,000. You also know the north, south, east, west. This is 1 to 9. This is 1 to 9. Red, fortune, white, for short, middle, white." After teaching them how to recognize mahjong, the alluring beauty, Yanyu, Furong, and Wu Lishua sat at a table. Under Yu Qianzhou's guidance, the four of them rubbed the mahjong tiles and stacked them in front of each of them. After the alluring beauty threw out 2 dice made of purple bamboo, Yu Qianzhou began to tirelessly walk in circles behind the four of them, teaching them how to play and the rules of mahjong, with everyone's comprehension and the guidance of the famous teacher, Yu Qianzhou. After 4 hours, the four of them had already eaten, hit, and made up the tiles. They were very familiar with the game. Mahjong was played noisily, and the Great Wall was built and destroyed. Yu Qianzhou looked at it a few times with his hands behind his back. After confirming that they had learned it, he then said to the four of them, "I still have something to do. You guys can play slowly. If you want it to be more exciting, you can bring some bets." The four of them were completely focused on playing and didn't have the mood to care about him. They all agreed and some of them even waved their hands, indicating that he should go and do what he needed to do. Yu Qianzhou's expression instantly twitched. He didn't know if teaching them how to play mahjong was a good thing or a bad thing. He shook his head and was about to leave. In the end, Zi, who was excluded from the table, pulled him and complained, "Yu Qianzhou, teach us how to play mahjong for 5 people. It's so boring for me to watch from the side alone. Your mahjong only has 5 people to play." Yu Qianzhou looked at her speechlessly. He waved his hand and said, "Only 4 people can play." He left Zi, who had a face full of resentment, and left. Yanyu wanted to send him off. Unexpectedly, Wu Lishua covered the tiles with both hands and pouted, "Sister Yan, don't peek at the tiles." She probably had a good hand of tiles. Yanyu was startled. She could only sit back down and continue to touch the tiles. The others were completely focused and didn't care about Yu Qianzhou's departure. Bang! Play! Sister Shuai, play! A pheasant's squeal suddenly came from inside the room, startling Yu Qianzhou who was outside. When he came back to his senses, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He touched his forehead and sighed inwardly. "I actually taught Phoenix to play mahjong. What did I do?" Chapter 983. In the divine ruin realm, in a huge space under a valley, more than 1,000 people were gathered together. Zhang Peng led Yu Qianzhou through the crowd and introduced as they walked, a total of 1,131 temple-colored spiders have hatched. These little things are indeed very ferocious, but as expected, the first person they see after hatching is like their biological parent. Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. From time to time, he would stop to look at the fist-sized, colorful, and hairy spiders that were climbing on his team members' shoulders. When he got a little closer, the little fellows would immediately scream and wave their sharp forelimbs, assuming an attacking stance. They had a strong desire to attack, and their ferocious nature was undoubtedly revealed. The team member that Yu Qianzhou was facing immediately shushed him. The huge spider that had raised its forelimbs on his shoulder obediently lowered its claws unwillingly. This made Yu Qianzhou very satisfied. If he could not control them, there would be no point in raising them. Zhang Peng also had one climbing on his shoulder. He stretched out his hand and hooked his finger at it. The huge spider obediently climbed onto his palm and stopped moving. Yu Qianzhou tilted his head to take a look and said with a smile, "These little fellows are quite cute. Let's give it a try." This was the second time he had come to see the temple-colored spiders after they hatched. The first time was when he had just hatched and was still in the process of getting along with the team members who had tamed them. This time, when he heard that they could listen to simple instructions, he could not wait to broaden his horizons. Zhang Peng walked out of the team and clapped his hands. Immediately, 10 team members came out from the basement opposite him. Each of them dragged out a metal cage, which contained the young of 10 types of ferocious beasts, including a python, a scorpion, and a toad. Although they were still small, they were much larger than the tiny temple-colored spiders. The army of heroes had already begun to hunt some ferocious beasts in the ruins of God, so it was naturally not a problem to capture some small things. Even though they were still young, each and every one of them was restlessly rolling around in the cages. See. Gua gua, they kept banging against the iron cages. It was as if the nature of ferocious beasts was on full display. Dragging these things out was naturally to let the little colored spiders test their skills. The reason why they did not use the big guys to test them was mainly because they were still small, and they were afraid that they would accidentally die. Zhang Peng gestured to the 10 team members who were pulling the cages. The 10 team members immediately opened the cages and dodged to the side. Almost at the same time when the 10 beasts crawled out of the metal cage, the 1,000 or so team members gave instructions to the temple rainbow spiders on their shoulders. The temple rainbow spiders immediately climbed down from their masters' bodies. In an instant, the group of fellows ran out from under everyone's feet. Their 8 long legs were red with excitement as they charged toward the 10 ferocious beasts. The ground trembled slightly like sifting beans. A large group of colorful, furry, long-legged fellows rushed forward without any regard for their lives. This scene caused Yu Qianzhou's scalp to go slightly numb. Just imagine how it would feel if this group of little fellows climbed onto his body. The 10 ferocious beast cubs immediately sensed danger. They stuck out their tongues, raised their pincers, flashed their claws, and bared their fangs. All of them roared to intimidate the little fellows that were charging over. It did not seem like this was the first time the little fellows had done something like this. They did not charge forward recklessly. Instead, they dispersed with great tacit understanding. They split into 10 groups and surrounded the 10 ferocious beast cubs. They were not in a hurry to attack. Instead, they constantly advanced and retreated from all directions to lure the beasts, causing the 10 ferocious beasts to constantly circle in vigilance. It was as though they could not look at each other. The coiled python seemed to be angered by the little colorful spiders. It attacked with its head and bit one of the little colorful spiders that came over to tease it. Just as it attacked, the group of little colorful spiders behind it immediately jumped up and swarmed over, stabbing their 8 sharp claws deep into the python's body. The coiled python immediately let out a tragic cry and quickly rolled around. However, these little fellows were born with iron bones and were not afraid of being hit. After their claws stabbed into the python's body, they refused to let go. Instead, they opened their fangs and bit wildly. What was even more terrifying was that the little colorful spider in the python's mouth did not take advantage of the python's opening mouth to scream to escape. Instead, it desperately burrowed into the python's mouth, stabbing its sharp claws continuously into the python's lower jaw. As the python rolled around, it immediately alarmed the other ferocious beasts that were surrounded. Seeing how fierce the little fellows were, they all fled. In particular, the giant scorpion's carapace was extraordinarily hard. It used its two large pincers to open up a path and immediately knocked over many of the little fellows. However, the little fellows had their own methods. They immediately spat out countless spider webs, forming a large net that trapped the escaping giant scorpion. A group of them desperately tried to hold it back, while another group immediately took advantage of the opportunity when the giant scorpion's limbs were tied up to jump up and use their sharp claws to stab it. In just a short while, the battle was over. The corpses of the 10 ferocious beasts were covered with little colorful spiders, and their sharp jaws were constantly biting. The entire underground space was filled with the sound of their chewing, sending chills down one's spine. Seeing this scene, Yu Qianqiu could not help but click his tongue. No wonder the Ape King said that the Divine Temple rainbow spiders had almost no natural enemies. Once they spread out, it would be a disaster for the other ferocious beasts. He did not expect this group of little fellows to be so powerful at such a young age. Zhang Peng pointed at the little colorful spiders and explained, "We are now consciously guiding and training them, instilling in them the awareness to cooperate in battle. I believe they will be of great use in the future. After a period of time, when they are slightly bigger, we will bring them along when we hunt ferocious beasts. There might be casualties, but the effect of training them in captivity is probably not as good as the effect of training them in actual combat." As expected of someone who had led troops to war. Yu Qianqiu looked at him in admiration and said, "We are not raising them to spin webs to catch mosquitoes in the future. We are raising them to be of great use. Casualties are allowed." "Understood, but there is a problem." Zhang Peng gestured and said, "Master said that these Divine Temple rainbow spiders can grow this big, but how many years will it take for them to grow this big?" Yu Qianqiu immediately took out a storage bracelet that he had prepared in advance and handed it to him. "I have already considered this problem. Inside is the myriad beast pill that is commonly used in the celestial world to tame ferocious beasts. It can speed up their growth. However, you have to control the dosage. Each colorful spider can only eat 1 pill per month. If you eat too much, it might cause them to suddenly die." While the two of them were talking, the group of little fellows had already gnawed the 10 ferocious beasts' corpses into piles of white bones. There was not even a speck of meat left on the bones. Moreover, the bones were also full of holes from their claws. Under Zhang Peng's command, the little fellows' respective masters also gave their orders. Immediately, they ran back one by one, covered in blood, and climbed onto their master's shoulders. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws, looking very ferocious. Chapter 984. After watching the little colored spiders hunting and killing practice, Yu Qianqiu motioned for Zhang Peng to dismiss everyone. Then, Zhang Peng led Yu Qianqiu on a tour of the newly built underground fortifications. The entire underground fortifications extended in all directions like a majestic underground maze. It was impossible for it to not be big enough to accommodate nearly 10,000 people. If not for Zhang Peng's guidance, Yu Qianqiu suspected that he would have gotten lost. Zhang Peng explained the reason why the underground fortifications were built this way along the way, incorporating many concepts of war. First, it was for both offense and defense. It could attack at any time and defend effectively. The second consideration was the comfort of the living quarters. It was not something that could be done in a short amount of time to finish looking at the entire underground fortifications. After glancing at half of it, Yu Qianqiu stopped and smiled. Forget it. Let's just look at this. You must have put a lot of thought into this. With the earth spell that Master taught me, building this underground fortifications is not a difficult task. Zhang Peng said respectfully. Master, are you not going to give any suggestions? Disciple's vision is limited and I'm afraid that there might be some slip-ups. I'm at ease with you handling this. I'll leave this place to you. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand casually and then frowned. You have to keep in touch with Elder Nan Ming of Flaming Mountain. Look for me if there's any trouble. Disciple understands. Zhang Peng cupped his fists. Yu Qianqiu nodded and disappeared before his eyes. After returning to the World Chamber of Commerce, he walked out of one of the rooms on the 22nd floor and saw Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng and De Ming Luan standing at the foot of the stairs talking. Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled. De Ming Luan was someone who would not visit for no reason. She must have come for something. He immediately walked and cupped his fists. What a rare guest. Greetings, Master De Ming Luan. De Ming Luan had just nodded and was about to speak when he suddenly heard a "pa" sound from the other end of the corridor. It sounded like something hard had been slammed on the table. Then, a delicate shout was heard. Bang! Damn it! Who was the one with such a bad hand? Was there a need to shout so loudly when they just touched the tiles? Yu Qianqiu's expression stiffened. Only then did he remember that there were still people around him. He glanced at the three of them and found that they seemed to be used to it. They did not find it strange at all. Clearly, they had been standing there for a while, and this was not the first time they had heard the commotion. Hee hee. A few ignorant women, please excuse us, excuse us. Before Yu Qianqiu could finish his sentence, Ze screamed excitedly, It's burning! It's burning! Little sister Shui, you've lit the cannon. Huh. You don't have any more chips left. It's time for Sister Yan Yu to take over. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Ze was going to take over as well? Little sister Phoenix, it's all your fault. If you didn't tell me to touch it, I wouldn't have been able to light Purple Clothes cannon. It was Wu Lishue's voice. Sister Shui, I didn't do it on purpose. It was Pheasant's aggrieved voice. Quickly give way, quickly give way. It's Sister Yan Yu's turn. It was Ziyi's cheerful voice again, followed by the messy sound of mahjong being played. Then, there was the pa-pa-da-da sound of the tiles being put together. The four men listened attentively for a while and looked at each other. De Ming Luan frowned and said, It's burning? What's burning? Wei Chuanqiu shook her head and said, I don't think it's burning anything. I heard that they've been burning for a day or two. How could there be so many things for them to burn? Wouldn't they have burned the entire World Commerce Association? Yu Qianqiu, what are they doing? Burn the entire World Commerce Association? Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched and he said awkwardly, They're playing mahjong. It's a game for fun. With that, the three of them understood. Wei Chuanqiu's eyes lit up and said, What kind of game is it that they can play for a day or two without stopping? Let's go and take a look. De Ming Luan and Yun Peng glanced at each other. The two of them were also curious. With the mentality of gaining knowledge, they followed. Yu Qianqiu stood dumbstruck on the spot for a while before following behind the three of them. When they pushed open the door and entered, they saw four women surrounding a table. In front of each of them was a long strip made up of small purple cubes. They took turns grabbing small cubes from the long strip on the table to replenish themselves. Then, they took out a small piece and threw it into the pile of small cubes in the middle of the table. There was also a woman with a pheasant on her shoulder. She was watching intently with her hands behind her back. When the few of them entered, these women actually didn't even bother to raise their heads to see who had entered. This made Wei Chuanqiu and the other two even more curious. They all strolled over to watch. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He thought to himself, could it be that these women have never played games before? Was there a need to be so focused on playing mahjong? He immediately coughed and said, let's stop for a moment. Let's first greet the seniors. When the women looked up, they immediately stood up and bowed. However, they didn't forget to buckle their mahjong tiles in front of them. This action made Yu Qianqiu's eyelids twitch. He coughed again and introduced them to Deming Luan and Yun Peng. As for Wei Chuanxiu, they already knew him. You don't have to be so polite. You guys continue playing. I'll just watch from the side. Wei Chuanxiu made the decision and gestured for them to stop. Then, she walked to the table and picked up a purple cube to see what it was. Unexpectedly, the pheasant on Wu Lishua's shoulder suddenly shouted, "Green bat, put it down. Don't peek at the tiles." Wei Chuanxiu was startled. The pheasant's words seemed to have some effect on him. He immediately buckled the tile back. The Deming Luan looked at the pheasant curiously. He noticed that it wasn't even at the immortal realm, but it could speak the human language. He immediately classified it as a normal beast cultivator because he had never seen a phoenix before. Seeing the women's uneasiness, the Deming Luan lost interest in watching anymore. He immediately said to Yu Qianqiu, "Come out for a moment. I have something to talk to you about." Then, the four men walked out. Yu Qianqiu asked while walking, "What business does the Deming Luan's wielder have with this junior?" The Deming Luan suddenly stopped and stared at Yu Qianqiu for a moment. Then, he said in a deep voice, "I have the immortal emperor's decree to find you." "Ah!" Yu Qianqiu cried out in surprise. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. After looking at Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu, he saw that their expressions were a bit strange. It was clear that they already knew why the immortal emperor was looking for him. He immediately became suspicious and said, "The immortal emperor is looking for me? That's impossible. The wielder isn't joking, right?" "It's not a joke." The Deming Luan frowned and said, "I won't say any conventional words. Let's be frank. The immortal emperor has decreed that you must compose a song and present it to the immortal emperor and immortal empress Ji Wu at the wedding ceremony. That's it." Yu Qianqiu's mouth was wide open. After a while, he slowly said, "Why? Let me tell you this." The Deming Luan paused and explained, "After the World Commerce Association's Miss Lu was taken away by immortal empress Ji Wu, immortal empress Ji Wu really liked the song she played. Later, she found out from her that the songs she played were all composed by you. So, she asked the immortal emperor to let you compose a song that will be passed down for generations to add color to the wedding ceremony. The wedding ceremony is not a child's play. It concerns the immortal emperor's face. For this reason, the immortal emperor personally listened to the Miss Lu play a few songs. He was very satisfied and praised it as the sound of nature. He also praised immortal empress Ji Wu for her good taste. After the immortal emperor confirmed from the Miss Lu that the songs were all composed by you, he immediately summoned me. That's what happened. Tsk tisk. Wei Chuanqiu exclaimed and said with a teasing tone, "Yu Qianqiu, I've known you for so long. How come I didn't know you could play such a literary thing? You really can't judge a book by its cover." A guy who uses profanity every time he opens his mouth can actually play the zither and compose songs. He can even get the praise of the immortal world supreme. Are you going to show us what you've got? Yun Peng nodded slightly with a surprised look in his eyes. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and ignored him on the spot. He gritted his teeth and said, "Lu Yanqing, you're doing stupid things to harm me again." In fact, he really wronged Lu Yanqing this time. In fact, the real culprit was Immortal Crocodile. Ji Wu found out about it from Immortal Crocodile and then faked it from Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianqiu, it doesn't matter if you're willing or not. Since the immortal emperor has spoken, no one in the immortal world will dare to disobey his will. You have to do it even if you don't want to. Otherwise, think about the consequences yourself. Deming Luan snorted coldly. If you do it well, the benefits you will get will be unattainable by others. Who doesn't want benefits? Yu Qianzhou didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But I don't have the fortune to enjoy it. You want me to make a song that will go down in history? That's a joke. Where did I get that ability? Seeing that he didn't seem to be lying, the three looked at each other. Deming Luan frowned. Could it be that the Miss Lu was lying? That those songs weren't written by you? You can't joke about this. It's not just about you anymore. If anything happens, even the two of them will be implicated. He pointed at Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng. Yu Qianzhou was startled. He said helplessly, I did it, but I didn't ask her to spread it around. He couldn't say it out loud. If he was dealing with an ordinary person, he could just plagiarize one or two songs from his previous life. But the immortal emperor wanted him to make a song that would go down in history. Was there a song that would go down in history in his previous life? Hearing him say this, Deming Luan heaved a sigh of relief and said, since it was done by you, then do your best. I'm not forcing you to do it immediately. There's still half a year until the wedding. Then he smiled meaningfully. This matter will be of great benefit to you. Can't you see it? What benefit? Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Deming Luan said indifferently, how many people in the immortal world can get the immortal emperor's decree to do things? With this decree on you, who would dare to touch you? Plus, the entire immortal palace will have to cooperate with you. Isn't this a great benefit? Yu Qianzhou's eyes suddenly lit up. His expression didn't look awkward at all. He licked his lips and said, in other words, during this period of time, I can do whatever I want in the immortal world? Deming Luan frowned and said, doing whatever you want is a bit too much, but as long as it's not too much. Before he finished speaking, Yu Qianzhou had already rolled up his sleeves and interrupted him arrogantly, Heartless Palace. Damn it! Help me destroy the Heartless Palace first. Chapter 985. What was the singing of a liberated serf? Yu Qianzhou understood it now. He understood it as a song that could change one's fate. This was a release that had been suppressed for a long time. He had been in the celestial world for such a long time, but he had never gone out. Because he had offended the Heartless Palace, he had been trapped in the hallucinatory immortal city. Today, now, he suddenly felt that the sky was high and the earth was wide. He could go anywhere and show off his skills again. How wonderful would it be to use the power of the Celestial Palace to get rid of the Heartless Palace? Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu looked at each other. Wei Chuanxiu chuckled, that's a good idea. Let the Celestial Palace get rid of the Heartless Palace first, hee. Deming Luan's expression was already ugly. When he saw Wei Chuanxiu joining in the fun, his expression became even uglier. He glared at him and said in a low voice, Yu Qianzhou, what kind of sweet dream are you having? Did you forget what I said just now? The Celestial Palace will only help you if it's not too much. Too much? Yu Qianzhou asked Wei Chuanxiu instead. Wei Chuanxiu chuckled and cooperated, this, really is too much. There are so many sects in the celestial world. One less Heartless Palace is nothing. Plus, it's not difficult for the Celestial Palace to get rid of the Heartless Palace. Yes. Yu Qianzhou immediately followed up. His eyes lit up as he nodded, that's right. It's not too much. Get rid of the Heartless Palace. He almost applauded Wei Chuanxiu. Deming Luan looked up and down at Yu Qianzhou. He could see that this guy didn't have a chance in the past. Now that he had won, he immediately asked for a sky-high price. He wanted to get rid of the number one sect in the celestial world. He snorted and sneered, "Why is the Heartless Palace so arrogant in the celestial world?" Because with his strength, he didn't dare to get along well with everyone in the immortal world. If that was the case, the immortal emperor would have destroyed them long ago. The sect master of Heartless Palace, Wang Qing, knows very well that the celestial emperor wants them to be the vanguard to balance the forces in the celestial world. The celestial emperor can't control the celestial world by relying on his subordinates to kill. Killing can only suppress the celestial world temporarily, not forever. Do you understand what I mean? Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered, and he said, "You mean to say that the immortal palace can't do many things without a good reason? They're afraid that it will cause conflict, so they let the Heartless Palace be the sucker? It's good that you understand, but your knowledge is still too shallow." The Great Bright Will coldly stared at him and slowly said, "How do you think the immortal emperor was able to control the immortal world for so many years?" This was the balancing act of a monarch, and it was not something that could be achieved by having a high cultivation and blindly slaughtering. No matter how strong the immortal palace is, they can't be the enemy of the entire celestial world forever. Unless the immortal emperor kills everyone. In reality, the Heartless Palace has been pushed to the teeth of the storm, and it has many strong enemies. It can only listen to the immortal palace. The immortal palace can wipe it out right away, and the sects in the celestial world will clap their hands. No one will say that the immortal palace is bullying people. If one Heartless Palace falls, the immortal palace will support a second Heartless Palace to help the immortal palace do things that offend people. I understand. Yu Qianzhou couldn't be happy anymore, and he nodded. This is a good method. This way, the immortal palace only needs to use blood and iron to deal with a small portion of people. This way, it won't make too many people dislike them, and it won't be the enemy of the entire celestial world. It can also maintain its deterrence towards the celestial world. So, it's not realistic for the immortal palace to wipe out the Heartless Palace for you. Of course. Deming Luan sneered. If you, Yu Qianzhou, have the ability to replace the Heartless Palace in the celestial world, I think the immortal emperor might agree to help you wipe out the Heartless Palace and make you the second Heartless Palace. But with the World Commerce Association's current strength, the immortal emperor probably won't even consider this request. After all, the charm of a song from you, Yu Qianzhou, isn't enough to mess up his empire. Damn! If I had the power to replace the Heartless Palace, why would I need the immortal emperor's help? I would have done it myself. Yu Qianzhou laughed at himself. Wei Chuanxiu snickered. Yun Peng snorted. The human heart is indeed the most sinister. Actually, it doesn't matter to you whether you wipe out the Heartless Palace or not. You've accepted the immortal emperor's decree. At least the Heartless Palace won't dare to do anything to you now. Even in the entire celestial world, not many people would dare to do anything to you. Deming Luan said with a hint of ridicule. Yu Qianzhou didn't hold back anymore. Since the Deming Luo was willing to say such things to him, he didn't have anything to hide. He immediately asked, "Then what about after the immortal emperor's wedding? Can he still guarantee my safety?" You're really thinking far ahead. Deming Luan couldn't help but say, "If you make the immortal emperor happy, no matter who wants to harm you, they will have to consider the immortal emperor's emotions. It shouldn't be a problem to guarantee your safety for a year or two. Or, as long as you're brave enough, when the immortal emperor gives you a reward, you can talk about the conditions. Ask him to guarantee your safety for the rest of your life. That way, no one will dare to touch you in the future. Talk about conditions with the immortal emperor?" Yu Qianzhou was suspicious and asked, "Is there any use? Has there ever been a successful negotiation before?" Deming Luan paused and said, "Most of them died without a complete corpse. You might be an exception." As soon as he said this, Wei Chuanxiu immediately laughed, and Yun Peng also smiled. Only Yu Qianzhou's face turned green and he said in a low voice, "What's the difference between this and asking me to die? Since you can't help me destroy the Heartless Palace, I want something else. Give me a netherworld token first and we'll talk about the rest later." Everyone was startled and Deming Luan asked strangely, "What do you want a netherworld token for? With your world commerce's foundation, do you want to go to the netherworld to make a fortune? If it's really for money, isn't this a good opportunity to make a fortune? The Immortal Palace can't guarantee anything else, but its wealth is unparalleled in the immortal world. You've reminded me, I want money too." Yu Qianzhou nodded in realization. He would rather eat the wrong thing than let it go. He then changed the topic and explained, "As for the netherworld token, it's naturally to go to the netherworld to collect information. Don't you know what collecting information is? It's useless to ask. Didn't the Immortal Emperor want me to make a song that will be passed down for generations? So I want to travel around to broaden my horizons and experience. Only by accumulating enough material can I make a really good song. The netherworld is naturally an indispensable place for collecting information, so I want a netherworld token." Collecting information? Deming Luan was startled. Does it mean accumulating information before it explodes? Yes, it means accumulating information before it explodes. Yu Qianzhou clapped his hands and flattered, as expected of the leader of the Commerce Alliance. You said what I wanted to say with just 4 words. Deming Luan ignored his flattery and said, "If that's the case, then wait for my news. It shouldn't be a big problem. Money. Don't forget there's still money. Collecting information requires money. It's hard to do anything without money. The more the better." Yu Qianzhou quickly shouted. However, Deming Luan had already left, so he didn't know if he heard it or not. "You can do whatever you want in the celestial world now. You can do whatever you want with Jintai's decree. He. Wei Chuanxiu twirled his mustache and laughed. Yunpeng felt bored and left in a flash. Yu Qianzhou seemed to have thought of something and didn't listen to Wei Chuanxiu's joke. He walked around the corridor and suddenly frowned. "Bat King Wei, since Deming Luan received the decree directly from Jintai, do you think this news has spread in the celestial world?" Wei Chuanxiu was startled and said, "It probably hasn't spread out yet." "But do you hope it has, or do you hope it hasn't?" "Of course I want it to spread. No, I have to ask someone to help me spread the news." Yu Qianzhou thought for a while and then left excitedly. Wei Chuanxiu was left alone in the corridor. Just as he was about to go back to where he was supposed to go, he suddenly heard a "pa" sound of something hard hitting the table. Ziyi's extremely wild laughter came. "Touch yourself." "Touch myself?" Wei Chuanxiu's mouth twitched. He sighed and shook his head. The words of girls nowadays are really scary. Although he said that, he couldn't help but feel curious. He slowly walked towards the place where the splashing sound came from. In the hall of the first floor of World Commerce, Yunnan Tian was inexplicably found by Yu Qianzhou's people. "Have you heard any news about me recently?" "Basically no. Only Tsangyan Xian of the Heartless Palace released some harsh words against you. He said that he will tear you into pieces and grind your bones into ashes sooner or later." "Damn. Old bastard, wait and see. Let's not talk about him." "That. Is there any news that Immortal Emperor Jin personally issued a decree for me to compose a song for the wedding of Immortal Emperor and Immortal Empress Ji Wu?" "Immortal Emperor personally issued a decree for you." How is this possible? Where did the punishment master hear this from?" "Bullshit. This is not a rumor. This is reliable news. Here's the thing. Just do this for me." The two hid in the corner of the hall and whispered for a while, causing others to look at them from time to time. They didn't know what the two were plotting. In the end, Yunnan Tian happily walked out of World Commerce. No one knew what he was going to do. Actually, what Yu Qianzhou asked him to do was very simple. He just wanted him to spread the news that immortal Emperor Jin ordered him to compose a song, the kind that had to be widely spread. As for the purpose, it was also very simple. He thought that after being suppressed in the immortal world for too long, it was time for him to hold his head high. It would be a pity if he didn't take advantage of such a good opportunity. However, he was afraid that others didn't know about such a big matter. It would be bad if he was accidentally hurt, so he wanted Yunnan Tian to go out and spread the news. Today, he was very patient. He walked around with his hands behind his back for a long time. When Yunnan Tian came back, he hurriedly went up and asked, "Has the news been spread?" The news spread very fast. It has already started to reach my ears. Yunnan Tian smiled. Not bad. Not bad. You do your thing. I'm going out for a walk. Yu Qianqiu whistled and walked out of world commerce with his hands behind his back. Looking at his behavior, no one knew what he wanted to do. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.